bit of whether to retain it. Of course, that and so much more is what is making the headlines in this particular daily that I have, and obviously also what has been making news given the fact that the president intimated on that task force to review the KBC. Aside from that, we equally have very interesting conversations coming your way up until 10 a.m. So stay put till that time. Many thanks for making time. I'm Doreen Arange Okelo. Jane.
Good morning, and welcome once again to the program. My name is Jane Mamboy. As always, we appreciate that you choose to start your morning with us right here on KBC Channel 1. And today being the International Day of Peace, we're going to be having a conversation just looking at how far we have come as a country, given it is a day that is celebrated globally, and the theme for this year being End Racism, Build Peace. What that is all about, we'll be discussing that in not too long. Welcome once again. Victor.
Good morning to you. And as we speak, the Ministry of Health across our borders in our neighboring country, Uganda, has reported the first case of Ebola in a place called Mubende, sub-region in Kampala. So, yes, we don't have such a case in Kenya, but it's always good to be cautious, more so those are crossing the border to or from Uganda, as well as just to be cautious about it. President Ruto today will be addressing the 77th UN National Assembly in New York. That will be his first address to the UN National Assembly, UN General Assembly rather. So we'll be looking forward to see what he has for Kenya and for the global arena, as well as his first inaugural speech at that high-level delegation meeting with all other leaders across the world. But for now, let's get this on the road, starting with Regina to take us through what we have in the news. Regina.
Good morning. Indeed. Now let's bring you up to speed with those stories that have been making headlines. And we start off at the Senate, where the Senate Speaker, Amason Kingi, says he will work to ensure that the sibling rivalry between the two houses of Parliament doesn't interfere with operations of the Senate. Speaking while opening the Senator's induction in Naivasha, Nakuru County, Kingi said he will continue to engage with his National Assembly counterpart, Moses Wetangula, to ensure a seamless flow of business by legislators in the 13th Parliament.
The National Assembly and the Senate that was taken a notch higher after the High Court nullified more than 20 laws in June 2020 could be a thing of the past. Senate Speaker Amason Kingi says talks are at an advanced stage to ensure both houses of Parliament complement each other.
Tukianza kuvuta pande tofauti, ataipata hasara kubwa pale, si mbunge wala si senator, bali ni Mkenya kawaida. Kwa hivyo kwa sababu Spika wa bunge la kitaifa Mheshimiwa Wetangula amejua vile hali ilivyo na anaona ile athari na hasara ya kuvuta pande mbili, bunge hizi mbili. Tumekaa na tukaafikiana ya kwamba miaka mitano inayokuja tutafanya kazi kwa minajili ya kumsaidia Mkenya wa kawaida. Hatuwezi kuleta malumbano, mtafaruku, kwa sababu tunataka bunge hili liwe na ubabe zaidi kushinda lile bunge lingine.
Kingi says Kenyans have previously been shortchanged due to unending supremacy battles, and it is time to make use of goodwill between the executive and the legislature for effective delivery.
Ubabe wetu ikiwa utaleta mtafaruku mpaka hatuwezi kupeana huduma kwa Kenya, basi itakuwa ni jambo la kufedhehesha. Na kwenda mbele ni kwamba nimezungumza na kakangu ambaye ni spika wa bunge la kitaifa, na tumesema kwamba ikiwa hapo awali kulikuwa na mikwaruzano na ubabe, basi mikwaruzano ile na ubabe ule kwa sasa tutauzika katika kaburi la sahau.
Senators call for clear demarcation of roles between the two houses, establishment of Senators Development Fund, as well as fine-tuning of existing grey areas.
This induction will set the pace for senators to understand their roles and responsibilities, inspire us to take up our legislative and leadership mantles, and strengthen devolution for better service delivery to the people of Kenya.
The Senate must urgently work on these perceptions and realities. In an attempt to address the integrity, fiefdom battles, and the constitutional shortcomings, I urge the Senate to, among other things, set up a dispute resolution mechanism between the two chambers and county governments. 2, consider the possibility of constitutional changes aimed at granting the Senate exclusive powers over the counties.
We can all agree that that is the ritual, so that we do not have situations like the many laws that were approved by the National Assembly. Completely, the Senate is not aware that even those laws existed.
Chief Justice Martha Koome, Attorney General Kihara Kariuki, and former Senate Speaker Ekwe Edhuro are some of the speakers expected at the forum on Wednesday 21st to discuss the legislative relations and emerging jurisprudence on devolved governors. The Senator's induction ends on Saturday. As the Senate induction kicks off, the next few days are going to be vital in empowering senators with the right information as well as skills for them to deliver on their mandate. For Channel 1 News from Naivasha, Nakuru County, I'm Gladys Sumungai.
We'll be keeping tabs on that as well as the National Assembly. Now, members of the National Assembly from constituencies whose portion of the National Government Constituency Development Fund was reduced are up in arms against the new sharing formula. Speaking after a closed-door meeting with ED, the National Government CDF, or rather Constituency Development Fund, during the board during their 2-day induction workshop, a section of MPs said the reduction will stall ongoing development projects.
Like in my constituency, we have 3 wards. Now from 37 million, I'm now, from 137 million, I'm now going to get 131 million. And the maximum constituencies with the 8 wards, they are going to be getting 165 million. It's not fair because I think I'm affected because I have 3 wards and we have said no, it should remain. But according to the CEO, he says that it was passed by us on the floor of the House. We are in June, and that's what they are following.
There are constituencies with big populations, with 8 wards, they get more money. 7 wards, less money. 6, 5 is the most common among many. There are more than 130 constituencies with 5 wards. And there are unfortunately, some constituencies that are small and only have 3 wards. So they get less, which is fair because of the number of people that you would be serving. So in that sense, for me, I think this is a more fair and equitable system.
Money matters, they are continuing to rock conversations during the induction. Remember, this is an induction process that is taking place at the bicameral parliament. Now, Alicia, there was drama at the Isiolo County Assembly on Tuesday during the swearing-in ceremony of 18 newly elected and nominated members of the County Assembly. This is after a section of Isiolo residents flocked to the National Assembly protesting the nomination of Kelvin Mbuthia Waruguru to represent minority groups. Mbuthia, who is also the brother to former Laikipia woman member at the National Assembly, Kate Waruguru, is among the 8 nominated MCA, was sworn in despite protesters rejecting his name on account of allegedly being a non-resident of Isiolo. Timothy Kipnosu with the details.
All the 10 elected and 8 nominated members of the Isiolo County Assembly were on Tuesday sworn in amid protest from a section of Isiolo residents. The aggrieved residents pitched camp at the entrance of Isiolo County Assembly chambers, demanding that former Laikipia woman Rep. Kate Waruguru's brother Kelvin Mbuthia Waruguru, who was nominated by the United Democratic Alliance to represent the minority groups, be exempted from the swearing-in ceremony, as he is a non-resident of Isiolo. It took the intervention of the area governor Abdi Guyo, who tried to calm down the protesters, promising to help them seek legal redress over the matter in the courts. Mbuthia vied unsuccessfully in his native Dingidhu ward in Laikipia County.
Honorable Dima Jilo Abdulur.
Halima Abgudo Gole, who was elected as chair of ward member of County Assembly, was also sworn in, becoming the first ever elected female member of the Isiolo County Assembly since the inception of devolution.
So nawashukuru sana wananchi wa Cherabwot wenye wameniamini kunipa hiyo kura kama mama. Najua sio rahisi kwa mama kuaminika kwa uongozi.
Elsewhere, a total of 47 Kericho members of the County Assembly took an oath of office at the County Assembly chambers on Tuesday, ready to execute their constitutional mandate for the next 5 years. The 30 elected and 17 nominated members of County Assembly took the affirmation of office in the presence of Area Governor Eric Mutai and Area Senator Aaron Cheriot, among other county officials. In Trans Nzoia, 33 members of County Assembly, among them 8 nominated, have been sworn in at a ceremony led by County Assembly Clerk Moses Lupao. This even as the Kenya Kwanza coalition was defeated in the Trans Nzoia Speaker seat race after Andrew Wanyonyi beat former Chiringanyi Member of Parliament Wesley Korir.
And our role is going to just assist him on oversight matters and help him achieve his objectives. So to the people of Trans Nzoia, expect good tidings, and our MCAs and our staff, better days are ahead.
And former Ganze Member of Parliament Teddy Mwambire has been elected as the second Speaker of the Kilifi County Assembly. He will be deputized by Ruruma Ward Member of County Assembly Naftal Nyai Kombo. Mwambire of ODM got a total of 37 votes against his close rival James Mlewa of the Pamoja African Alliance Party, who got 13 votes.
Tunahakikisha kwamba ugatuzi unafanya kazi kikamilifu. Nafikiri ndani ya miaka 10 hamjaona hata wale wanaitwa village administrators ndani ya gatuzi la Kilifi. Huu ni wakati ambao nitakuwa karibu sana gavana, tuhakikisha kwamba tunaweka msingi mpaka chini kabisa.
For every ruling that the chair will make as provided by the...
In Murang'a County, Johnson Mukoha was elected Speaker of the County Assembly. 46 members of County Assemblies participated in the polls, which saw Mukoha garner 40 votes against his only opponent, Stephen Masharia, who got 6 votes.
Honorable members, I will meet with various leadership of Murang'a and seek support of the experienced lawmakers to help you deliver.
Mukoha will take over from Duarte Kariuki, who has served as Speaker of Assembly for 2 terms. The third assembly will consist of 35 elected and 12 nominated MCAs.
Now, President Dr. William Ruto will today make his maiden address at the 77th United Nations General Assembly in New York, the United States. President Dr. Ruto will also hold bilateral talks with several heads of state and government during the 4-day meeting.
Of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations.
The 77th United Nations General Assembly will take place in person once again after 2 years of disruption due to the COVID-19 pandemic. President Dr. William Ruto is among world leaders attending this year's assembly, being held under the theme, A Watershed Moment, Transformative Solutions to Interlocking Challenges. The war in Ukraine, climate change and nuclear disarmament are likely to dominate speeches and discussions during the forum at the UN headquarters in New York. A statement from the Kenyan Ministry of Foreign Affairs said President Dr. Ruto will give his debut address to the UN and hold bilateral talks with several heads of state and government. He will also lead Kenya's quest to harness relations with the United States of America, guided by the 5 pillars bilateral strategic dialogue partnership. In his capacity as coordinator, President Dr. Ruto will also chair a meeting of the Conference of African Heads of State on Climate Crisis. The 77th United Nations General Assembly coincides with the worst drought in the Horn of Africa, with many countries in the region, including Kenya, experiencing unprecedented effects in the last 40 years.
Now to the corridors of justice. A former procurement officer at the Kerio Valley Development Authority confirmed that former President Uhuru Kenyatta took part in the conceptualization of the Kimwarer and Aror dams when he was finance minister in 2009. Charity Moyo confirmed that others who signed the concept paper before the project was advertised for bidding were former Minister John Mishuki of Environment and Fred Ngumo of Regional Development Authorities.
Of Charity Moyo, the first witness in the 63 billion shillings Kimwarer and Road Dam scandal that had begun in November 2021 continued on Tuesday morning before Chief Magistrate Lawrence Mugambi. Defense lawyer Katwa Kigen, representing former Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich, tasked the former procurement officer at Kerio Valley Development Authority to confirm a letter signed by former President Uhuru Kenyatta when he was Finance Minister in 2009, alongside Ministers Frederick Gumo for Regional Development and John Mishuki for Environment in 2008 to align projects to Vision 2030.
The other guide was Vision 2030.
Katwa further probed why charges against Moyo were dropped and her status changed to a prosecution witness in plea bargaining. A total of 45 witnesses are lined up for the Aror and Kimwarer Dams case.
Now, from the corridors of justice to matters agriculture, is that the government has rolled out the fertilizer subsidy program and capped purchase at 100 bags per farmer. Crop Development Principal Secretary Dr. Francis Owino says the fertilizer is available at the National Cereals and Produce Board depot.
The 3.5 billion shillings fertilizer subsidy program has been operationalized, with farmers in regions experiencing short rains prioritized. According to the Ministry of Agriculture, the first phase of the subsidy program targets to subsidize 1.42 million 50 kg bags of fertilizer that is estimated to put 1.4 million acres of land under food crop during the short rain seasons. Individual farmers will be entitled to a maximum of 150 kg bags of fertilizer that are already in NCPB facilities across all regions experiencing short rains. With the subsidy in place, a 50 kg bag of diammonium phosphate, commonly known as DAP, will retail at 3,500 shillings. Calcium ammonium nitrate used for top dressing will retail at 2,875. Urea at 3,500 shillings. NPK will go for 3,275 shillings. MOP will be purchased at 1,775 shillings, and sulfate ammonia will retail at 2,220 per 50 kg bag. 2 ships have docked at the port of Mombasa, bringing in 11,700 metric tons of fertilizer. Another shipment loaded with 24,509 metric tons of fertilizer is expected to dock at the port of Mombasa in 4 days. This is the second time the government is subsidizing fertilizer this year, after prices rose to a high of 7,000 shillings for a 50 kilo bag. In April, the government spent 5.7 billion shillings to subsidize 2.28 million bags of fertilizer. During a meeting with the Agriculture Committee of the National Assembly, Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Peter Munya said the government needed 30 billion shillings this financial year to subsidize fertilizer to 2,800 shillings per 50 kg bag.
Still on matters business, Housing Principal Secretary Charles Hinga is calling on the judiciary to expedite cases involving mega projects, warning that delays are hurting delivery of government programs. Hinga cited a case filed by the Central Organization of Trade Unions, COTU, challenging the operationalization of the housing fund. He said this continues to deter the dream of affordable housing for many Kenyans.
In President William Ruto's key pillars is the affordable housing agenda that targets to build 250,000 units annually. But the project faces headwinds following a court case filed by the Central Organization of Trade Unions, COTU, that sought to stop the government from effecting the housing fund levy. Though the case was filed in 2019, the case is yet to be determined. A state that Housing Principal Secretary Charles Hinga wants that it continues to hamper the government's program on providing affordable housing.
You've already seen the beneficiaries of this home, some of them in Park Road. They are the ordinary Kenyans, the ordinary Kenyans. It's not us who are living in those places. We have 55 Juakali artisans, today who are living in those houses in Park Road. We have got 8 touts, makanga, who are in Park Road. That's the face of Kenya. So those people had no hope of ever owning a home except for this particular program. So we also want to even implore on our judiciary, even your own staff, your security guards, your bodyguards, those are the low-paying cadres. They are also looking for those homes. So even as you entertain the frustration of these things in the corridors of the law courts, all we are asking for, if there is something that we have not done procedurally, just make sure you give us timely judgment.
With the hope that the matter will be expeditiously dealt with by the judiciary, the Housing PS is calling on Kenyans to continue registering with the fund as a form of investment.
They live in a house, but that house does not meet the Article 43 standards of our constitution, which is a decent, affordable home with basic services. Majority of Kenyans don't live in a house with sanitation. They don't have water. They don't have electricity. That is not the standard that is contained in our constitution.
Under the plan, Kenyans can own the housing units by paying mortgage at a rate as low as 5,000 shillings monthly.
Unlike banks, unlike other lenders, because this is our chama, our national chama for housing, we are saving for each other and we are helping each other to build these houses at affordable rates, and we are giving them affordable mortgages.
But how does retired President Kenyatta's plan for affordable housing fit into the new administration's plan?
President Uhuru's Big Four agenda, it was 500,000 over 5 years. So it's not a scale down. So 250 a year is obviously a step up, because it means in 5 years the numbers are much higher than that.
Now, before we cross over to matters sports, is that the central bank governor who is serving for the last term yesterday during the members of parliament's induction at the National Assembly buildings, he revealed and singled out banks and some unnamed Forex traders for the current artificial shortage of dollars that is leading to a free fall of the local currency. As it stands, the Kenyan shilling trading against the greenback is at 120 shillings and 42 cents. He said this is a result of a kipindi of some sorts, where the siphoning of funds from the central bank spurred inflation and devaluation of the Kenyan shilling, and that this recent pressure on the shilling had nothing to do with market sources. However, the ripple effect of this is that Kenya is going to be facing expensive imports, so to speak. So he said that there were some few banks that were pushing Kenya back to the time of the golden bag scandal of the 90s, where businessman Kamlesh Patni, named adversely in that particular case, insisted in court that the golden bag was designed to bring the much needed foreign exchange to Kenya from the mineral-rich, conflict-ridden countries like Congo and Sudan. That was then. But now CBK governor said, now that the electioneering period is over, actually the electioneering period contributed to the breach of law, and in quote, we were in a particular kipindi. Politics, etc., everything was politics, but now that we are on the other side, I think that sanity has returned. This was just some of the business stories that came from the MP's induction there that is currently underway for at least this week. Now we cross over to the sporting arena, where embattled Football Kenya Federation President Nick Mwendwa yesterday led other officials in accessing the federation's headquarters located in Kasarani after a one-year closure. The headquarters was locked down by police last year after Sports Cabinet Secretary Amina Mohammed disbanded the federation. The ousted officials were barred from accessing the premises. The Ministry of Sports, however, says the caretaker committee is still in place and FKF officials remain suspended.
Tuesday afternoon, embattled Football Kenya Federation President Nick Mwendwa led other officials in reopening the Federation headquarters.
Kuna mtu amesema freedom has come. Leo freedom imerudi katika football. Leo tumefungua goal project. Tumefungua ofisi za FKF tena. Ni siku ya furaha kama wewe ni mpenzi wa football. Ni siku ya furaha kwa Mkenya yoyote ule alikuwa anataka mtoto wake arudi kwa kiwanja kucheza football.
Mwendwa was accompanied by police and FKF officials, including Secretary General Barry Otieno. This comes a few weeks after Mwendwa, who had been in and out of police custody, wrote to FIFA informing them that he will soon be back in office.
Nataka kuambia wewe kama unaona mambo yako yakiwa mabaya leo na una imani na unaamini hujafanya lolote, ukiwa na imani, ipo siku itajulikana ukweli.
On Wednesday, the courts will rule whether or not fresh charges preferred against Mwendwa after his initial case was dropped by the Director of Public Prosecutions will be allowed.
Wale wameumia, hawakucheza football, hawakujua wataenda wapi, hawakujua hii football ni ya nini, na hawakuelewa kilichofanyika. Nataka kuambia leo, kwa sababu tuna serikali ambayo iko serious na mambo ya youth na inaheshimu matakwa ya watu. Leo tumefungua goal project.
This comes even as the Minister of Sports installed caretaker committee announced on Monday that the start of the new season, which was initially slated for this weekend, has been pushed forward by a week to pave way for Kikoso games, which are currently ongoing in Kericho.
Well done. Is this the return of Nick Mwendwa? Our sports desk is going to be keeping tabs on that, and that efficiently puts a cap on matters news. Remember, further details are available on our website, including that the country is on high alert after neighboring Uganda there. A man was killed, or rather died of Ebola in Uganda. So the country remains on high alert, especially on the borderline in Busia. It is a wrap. I'm Regina Manyara. I leave in the able hands of the rest of the team. You're still watching Good Morning Kenya.
After the hell the Samoan werewolf Fatu put to you, you wish to enter in again. You want to take that risk with your family sitting at home, worried about if daddy is going to be all right. Your children's tears are going to be on your head, and Fatu's hand is going to be on your throat.
Tom Lawler, this ain't no Figure 4 podcast.
Life cannot always be too serious.
Yeah, man, what's up, yeah?
Hello? We've got to take some time off and laugh, and laugh. And we tickle you down with lots of laughter.
That's why I'm saying I'm who is who. Huh?
With satire like no other.
Tell him to bring it on.
Takachapa.
she doesn't want to get in touch with anyone, and I'll have to ask you not to tell anyone that she's living with me.
Whom did you tell that I don't want to see anyone?
Just tell me what it is, sweetheart. Come on, tell me what you want.
A murderer? Where is that murderer? Where is that evil woman who killed my Alfonso? Where is she?
You don't deserve anything, got it? So that it won't come as a surprise later, Nuria. I want you to know that I'm taking you out of my will and you're not getting a cent from me. Kid, you get that, my dear daughter.
Welcome back to Good Morning Kenya. We now move on to the next segment where we get to have a quick look at what the papers have for us this 21st day of September 2022. We're still using the hashtag Good Morning Kenya on Twitter. I start you off with the Daily Nation. Let me just show you how the front page is looking like this morning. There we go. Quite a number of stories have been captured here on the front page. We start with the story here on the header. Queries over 55 billion Kenya shillings spent in the last days of President Uhuru Kenyatta's administration. And the question remains, where did the money go? They go on to say that members of parliament are raising questions regarding the colossal amounts of money allocated to various government ministries and agencies just days to the end of President Uhuru Kenyatta's term, at a time when the country is facing huge foreign debt and food as well as fuel subsidy crisis. This is a story that has been covered on page 2 and 3 of this particular daily. You can go ahead and just grab a copy to get to read more of the details that have been captured in this particular story. Elsewhere, another question, just how much did the government spend on the maize subsidy? 1 billion is the figure that is being estimated per various estimates, but there could be some loose change on top of this 1 billion. That is a story that has also been covered here on this particular daily on doubts over maize flour subsidy with cost delay payments formulas still looming. In brief, they talk of 7 billion, which is the amount that was spent on the maize flour subsidy program that ended on the 20th of August. And this is according to President William Ruto. Again, we said we need to get used to the fact that he's a president and not Deputy President William Ruto. So that has been captured there. Still on matters agriculture, subsidized fertilizer capped at 100 bags per farmer. So the Ruto government will spend 3.5 billion Kenya shillings to subsidize the cost of 1.4 million 50 kg bags of fertilizers. But on the flip side, farmers will only be allowed to buy a maximum of 100 bags just to ensure that this particular subsidy benefits as many farmers as it possibly can. That story has also been covered here on the back page of the Daily Nation. Another story concerning drought has also been covered here on the front page of the Daily Nation. With rains failing, the country experts continue to warn that some 4.3 million Kenyans across the country will require food rations in the month of October. But then again, the question still remains, where will the money come from to ensure these rations get to this an estimated 4.3 million Kenyans who might face starvation due to the failing rains as per the weatherman. Moving on to some matters concerning health, jitters in Uganda as they declare the first case of Ebola since 2019. At present, there is no licensed medication to prevent or treat the disease, although a range of experimental drugs are already being developed and thousands have been vaccinated in the Democratic Republic of Congo and neighboring countries. But as far as Uganda goes, so far just that one death has been reported. Coming to the main read on the front page of the Daily Nation, how Raila Odinga lost. So they go on to say, basking in the false promise of victory. Journalists. Captions. All right. So, basking in the false promise of victory, betrayed by lieutenants in his traditional bastions, suffering the curse of false incumbency, labeled a state project by William Ruto, and running a disorganized agents system, Raila Amolo Odinga was flying blind on the August 9th general elections, and consequently, devastating consequences are what he has been experiencing so far. They go on to give on different angles as to how they have captured this story. Number one, looking at how almost it didn't count, looking at the change agents, the curse of incumbency, supremacy battles as well. So that is the front page of the Daily Nation for you this morning. Coming to the Star newspaper, again, just for you to have a quick look at how it is looking like this morning. There we go. Starting with this story here on the header, children with cancer to get more chemo session. This is good news as far as matters to do with health go, and especially so for children who are facing cancer, with more sessions being allocated for them. Coming to the main read, headache for Ruto as MPs ask for more money. So taxpayers will require to foot an extra 10 billion Kenya shillings to fund the additional perks that members of parliament are asking for, and especially when it comes to some of these allowances. And one that is really a thorn is in regards to that about sitting allowances. But the push for welfare means an additional 1.2 billion Kenya shillings annually and 6 billion for the 5 years that they will be in office. So that is definitely a conversation that has stirred up quite the reaction across the social and mainstream media in regards to this particular ask by members of parliament for more monies to be allocated to them. Chebukati takes a break after grueling polls. Yes, this is Chebukati, pictured therein. He takes a break, enjoying some golfing, away from the harshness that he had experienced with the nation, considering this past period that we have just come out of the general elections. So those are majorly the two stories that have been featured here. Remember, we're having a conversation revolving around the International Day of Peace in just a moment. But before we get to do that, let me just take you through the front page of the People's Daily. Again, not many stories have been captured on this particular daily, but the main read is concerning the state having spent 54 billion on the eve of the polls. This is as per the MPs. Again, the story concerning 3.5 billion Kenya shillings, the fertilizer subsidy has found its way here. Agriculture officials say the commodity already required for farmers to access it in the stores in the regions. All these are put in place to ensure to bring down the cost of living and production, consequently for farmers. Other stories just concerning the upper house bonding session, captured here on the front page of the People Daily. The Standard newspaper, hold on, it is right here. There we go. The Standard newspaper, CBK boss shocking revelation, as he told MPs that the Goldenberg-like scheme was hatched by some rogue banks during the heated political season that led to the shilling slump in historic lows. So those are briefly just some of the stories that have been captured on the different dailies this morning. We do believe you are best positioned now to grab whichever daily best resonates with you. That brings us to a close of In the Headlines. We take a very quick commercial break, but we'll be back to continue with the next segment all about the International Day of Peace. Do stay with us. Welcome back. We now get started with the first conversation all about the International Day of Peace, a day that is set aside to ensure that we bring the global population together to just mark the far that we have come in regards to peace across the country, and also just bringing this conversation to the Kenyan context, looking at the fact that we have just come from a very intense electioneering period. This is just a very timely day that we get to mark as a part of the international community. And to help us with this conversation this morning, we are joined via Zoom by Sam O'Connor, who is our commissioner at the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. Good morning, sir, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, and happy to be at Good Morning Kenya show at KBC.
Asante sana. Thank you for joining us this day. Now, before we get further into the conversation, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, for the benefit of our viewers, just a brief mandate of what the Commission is all about.
The National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC, was established after the aftermath of the 2007-2008 post-election violence. It was one of the commissions that the Kofi Annan mediation process proposed that Kenya should establish an institution of this nature to ensure that some of the structural issues that led to post-election violence are addressed by an institution that is mandated to do this work on a daily basis. So our work is basically to ensure that there is peace in Kenya, there is cohesion, and the people of Kenya do not experience any form of discrimination on the basis of ethnicity, race, or any other consideration that we have in our country. So ours is a broad mandate that also is supposed to breathe life into the national values that are enshrined in our in our constitution, to ensure that people are patriotic, they live a life that inspires confidence, and they take care of each other. So it's a broad mandate, and we've been able to do it for the last almost 10 years now as an institution, and our mandate has grown beyond what was established after the Kofi Annan mediation process, to now dealing with other societal issues like hate speech, and we are also very active in ensuring that all processes in our country, including elections, are peaceful, and the people of Kenya also begin to internalize the concept of peace and cohesion. That's why we also have outreach in schools and many other places.
All right. Now, looking at the importance of this day on a national scale here in Kenya, we're just coming from a time where we had our general elections, and looking at history, elections have always been a very tense, very sensitive, very peace-sensitive time in our country. Why is this day important for each and every Kenyan to participate in marking, given, yes, it is a global day, but looking at the Kenyan context, politically speaking?
I think for this particular year, the theme of the International Day of Peace for this year is End Racism, Build Peace. And as you've rightly put it, Kenya should be the country that should be celebrated at on this particular day, because we had a very difficult year, a highly competitive election, but the people of Kenya overcame all odds and ensured that during the campaigns, they were peaceful. During election time, they were peaceful, and we also experienced tranquility when the results of the elections were announced by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. So in terms of dedicating this day, I would want to say the people of Kenya are the ones who deserve accolades for ensuring that the campaign period, the election process, the announcement of the results, and also the declaration by the Supreme Court of the President, they still remain calm, they still remain peaceful, and most of the people, and I bet to say there are still individuals across the world who do not believe that Kenya was able to pull through this process, because from the 2007 and 2008 experience, Kenya's elections have always been viewed through the prism of violence, disruption, and so on. But this particular one, being a transitional election, being highly competitive, the people of Kenya rose to the occasion and demonstrated to the world that you can go through a competitive process, you can even disagree with the electoral results, but you still have to maintain peace. And I want to say that is the resilience that demonstrates the people of Kenya are equal to none in the world. And I want to say on this day, of celebrating the International Day of Peace, I want to pay tribute to the people of Kenya and say, this is the way to go. Our democracy has come of age, and I think going forward, the whole world should be seeing Kenya through the prism of peaceful elections and not what you have always been attributed to.
Fantastic. And, that's really something we need to applaud ourselves as Kenyans for, looking at how far we have come when it comes to maintaining peace in our country, and especially after an election. But now this brings me to looking at this day and time. This particular day requires a 24-hour period where we put down arms and cease fire for at least 24 hours in honor of marking this day. But then again, it requires more than just this physical manifestation of putting down arms and seizing fire, because we're living in a time where social media is also a very active platform, and we are seeing hate speech and hate crime also being perpetrated on the social media platforms. How can we manage such platforms to ensure that also as we mark this day, we are sending the message across all platforms?
I think the 24-hour period is more symbolic, that the world should pause and reflect and say, are we continuing to build a better world for everyone? And if you take what is required of this day to commemorate the fact that we need peace in the world, we need peace in Kenya, but also to amplify the principles of peaceful coexistence, non-violence, and so on. So in declaring a ceasefire, for example, there are so many wars, there are so many conflicts, there are so many disputes happening in the world today. And if you declare a ceasefire of 24 hours, you cannot imagine how many lives you will have saved by just ceasing to engage in violence or in combat for 24 hours. So there is a symbolism in ensuring that we sit back, pause for 24 hours, reflect on the kind of world and country and community we are building, but also to make sure that we reflect on those who have given their lives to contribute to issues of peace. We reward them, we commend them, but also to ensure that the culture of peace becomes really what we require.
Yes.
All disputes and all conflicts in the world cannot be resolved through violence, through armed struggle, and so on. But if we embrace non-violence methods like mediation, alternative dispute resolution, reconciliation, and ensure that even in the worst of cases, we resort to methods that do not lead to loss of life or loss of blood, that is the spirit of this day. To pause and reflect on the need for peace and the need to inculcate a culture of peace across the world, to close all the windows of hostilities that exist for these 24 hours through a ceasefire, but also to amplify the principles that underpin peacemaking and dialogue.
Now, let's talk a bit about the theme of this year, which states end racism and build peace. Now, one would wonder, okay, racism in this day and time is not something that many people have encountered, but it's still a situation that continues to cut through time. What are some of these structures in this day and time that continue to facilitate racism, not just in the Kenyan space or in the African space, but globally speaking, that we need to deal with on this particular day?
Racism is still a global problem across the world, and that is why the United Nations, in its wisdom, decided to dedicate the 2022 International Day of Peace to ending racism and in order to build peace. And I would like to say that across the world, there are so many cases of racist or racial attacks, racial discrimination, and even inequality that is conducted or executed because of where somebody comes from, their race, their descent, their ethnicity, and so forth. So it is still a global problem in terms of contributing to suffering in the world, contributing to inequality, and all manner of discrimination that exists. So that is something that is still ongoing, and our society as humanity, we continue to battle the question of racism across the world. When you come to Kenya, it is very easy to say that we do not have a problem with racism.
Yes.
But I can tell you there are subtle expressions of racial behaviors in our country. They are not open, they are not loud, but if you go across the country, you will see there are subtle expressions of racism. But also in a bigger context, when we use the word racism, especially in the field of conflict resolution and peace building, it also encompasses the question of ethnicity.
Yes.
So in our country, as we commemorate the International Day of Peace today in Eldoret, here in Isiolo County, we will be emphasizing the need for Kenya to embrace our diversity, to go beyond ethnicity and not to discriminate anyone on the basis of their ethnicity, gender, race, or any other form of identity. So we still have a lot to do. And the link between racism and building peace. One of the biggest structural causes of conflicts and disputes across the world remain the question of discrimination. And one avenue of discrimination that we experience is through the racism, through ethnicity. That is why if we have to build durable peace, and especially for us as a country, having come out of this election in a peaceful way, our agenda going forward now is to build what we'll call durable peace, sustainable peace, almost permanent peace. And that peace can only be built if we embrace our diversity, eliminate all forms of discrimination, and ensure that there is equality in our society. So it's a very, very important subject for us as a nation and also for the world. And I just want to say, if you go back to the COVID-19 pandemic, you saw expressions of racism from the time COVID-19 started. Different nationalities were treated differently.
Yes.
We saw xenophobic attacks in some of the groups. And when it came to the distribution of the vaccines, there was wild outcry about how that process was being managed, which of course goes to demonstrate that we still have a challenge in terms of the question of racism and how we treat each other in the whole world. So I would like to call upon Kenyans not to take it for granted. And even when you see subtle expressions of racism in our country, it's important that we report them, because those subtle expressions will ultimately grow into the service and maybe create problems between the different races in our country. So it's not something we can ignore. And as a commission, we are completely aware of the dangers caused by those subtle expressions of racism in our country. They are currently underground, but you never know when they will come to the surface. And that's why we must always be watchful when it comes to such expressions.
Absolutely. And I like the fact that you brought in the whole question of ethnic differences, which consequently result to ethnic rivalries as per the Kenyan context, which in one way or the other seem to have a political tie to them, and especially in this time that we are in. Now, looking at the political class, what goodwill do they need to ensure that they're also propagating among the population to ensure that they're also at the forefront when it comes to speaking messages of peace among the country's population?
Ethnicity is usually amplified more during elections. And when you look at, especially this last election and also the previous ones in our country, the main tool for mobilization has always been ethnicity. You will find political elites who will mobilize, organize, sit together, and then start arranging their political campaigns around different ethnic identities. And of course, we know the consequences of that. In the past, it has cost us lives, especially in 2007 and 2008, where we lost more than 1,000 people, and we had over 500,000 people displaced across the country. And we still have people, as we speak, who still have not recovered from that traumatic experience of 2007 and 2008. Some of them are living as IDPs, and others are still across the country seeking for justice and restitution. So what I would like to say is, in this particular election, first of all, I would like to commend the political leaders, particularly the top three, the President William Ruto, the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, and the former President Uhuru Kenyatta, because when the results of the elections were announced, we expected, as usual, and the whole world expected Kenya to implode. But the former Prime Minister said he doesn't agree with the results, and he said he was going to proceed to the Supreme Court. And of course, we did not have any violence across the country as we have had in the past. When the results are also challenged in court, the President, William Ruto, accepted that let's proceed to the Supreme Court. He did not call for mass protest and so on. And I want to bring also the question of the former President Uhuru Kenyatta. He played his role as outgoing president by ensuring that we have a smooth transition.
Yes.
Those are significant actions by our political leaders, and I've just mentioned the top three, but also across the board. We had Governor Nyang'nyong'o, for example, in Kisumu, calling upon the residents of Kisumu not to destroy their city because of elections. So we had a good behavior among many politicians in this election, and it is something that we would like them to continue to ensure that they can have competitive elections, competitive politics, competitive campaigns, but they should not lead Kenyans along the route of destruction because of ethnicity or because of the fact that they hold different political persuasions. So that is the message I would like. And as we move forward, as I already mentioned, our democracy has come of age. We now need to take that democracy into our hearts as citizens and ensure that even in the next election and going forward, we will only be seen under the prism of peaceful elections.
Yes.
We will embrace our identities as ethnicities, but that should not be a reason for us to kill each other, to hate each other, or to destroy whatever we have as a country. So this is the beginning of a process where I believe Kenya will mature into a stable democracy, and we will always be embracing our diversity for the positive that it brings to our country and not the negative. And we encourage political leaders to be part and parcel of this journey as we move forward.
Unity in diversity, quite the message there. Now, these particular celebrations are going to be happening today in Eldoret Town, Uasin Gishu County. Is there a particular reason behind this particular venue for this year's celebrations?
We've always had these celebrations across the country. In fact, 2 years ago, we had it in 5 locations in Kenya. We had it in Nandi, we had it in Narok, Mombasa, Nairobi, and other places. The choice of Eldoret is something that was there before. We had planned that we'll bring this particular event to Uasin Gishu County. Uasin Gishu County is a highly cosmopolitan county with different, almost all ethnic groups exist in this county and even different races. It is also a county that holds a lot of future for the northern part of Rift Valley. And as you know, North Rift at the moment is not stable in terms of peace. We have ethnic conflicts in Turkana, in West Pokot, in Elgeyo Marakwet, Baringo, Samburu, and even Laikipia. And being the hub or the headquarter of North Rift, we want to use this opportunity to launch an activity which we are calling as a commission, Ending All Conflict Program. And that project is going to focus on ethnic conflict in the northern part of Kenya, especially Rift Valley, but also extend to other places like Isiolo, Marsabit, Mandera, and Wajir, because having gone through this process of delivering a peaceful election, we believe that if we end all the conflicts that exist in the country, we bring all the groups to engage in dialogue, then that is the time our country can truly experience true peace. So that is the reason why we chose Eldoret to launch that particular initiative and to tell the people of the northern part of the country who are currently suffering because of one form of conflict or the other, that the Commission and the nation is coming to work with you and your leaders to make sure that we bring those protracted conflicts to an end and open a new chapter in the northern part of the country that will be built around development, peace, reconciliation, and so forth. We'll also be using this opportunity here in Eldoret today to reward and commemorate those who have been working hard across the northern part of the country to work for peace, to bring communities together. So we have a couple of them who will be given certificates of recognition today, awards to appreciate their effort, but also to encourage them to continue working for peace and to ensure that communities in the northern part of the country reconcile. So that is the reason why we chose Eldoret as the venue of this important event today, the International Day of Peace, which is aimed at ending racism and building peace. And of course, you also know that this county celebrated a lot during the inauguration of the President William Ruto.
Yes.
So because of giving us our 5th president, I think it is also timely to join in those positive emotions and continue the celebration that started during the inauguration and ensure that Eldoret and Uasin Gishu will be at the leadership, even in contributing to peace and reconciliation across Kenya.
And what are some of the activities that maybe residents of Eldoret Town can expect throughout the day, and your set objectives for these activities, and hopefully the outcomes that you're looking forward to from these particular activities that will be happening?
We have a couple of activities that are lined up. We'll start this morning, immediately after this show. We shall flag off a walk from the city center to the venue of the celebration. We shall also have an opportunity to get dignitaries who will be participating in this event to plant trees that will commemorate this particular day. And then we shall have testimonies during the course of the day of people telling their stories, how they are working to build peace, how the kind of challenges they are facing, but also emphasizing the importance of us ending all or closing all chapters of hostilities amongst ourselves and ensuring that we lay the proper foundation for building durable peace in the country. So as our expectation, we expect that there will be peaceful messages across the board throughout the day, that people will begin to appreciate the importance of embracing ceasefire and also using non-violent ways of resolving their disputes. And of course, as they go back to their different counties, they will carry the message that we now have a plan to ensure that all the conflicts in the northern part of the country and any other part of the country for that matter will be something that we as a commission and the whole country will be working to make sure that we end it. So it is just amplifying the messages of peace, commemorating the day, ensuring that those who have worked for this particular agenda in the previous years are also awarded and recognized and encouraged to continue to do the work. So that is our expectation, and we hope that all people in Kenya now who are engaged in one form of conflict or the other will respect the request for this day, that we declare a ceasefire, we embrace nonviolence, and we amplify the messages for peace and reconciliation across the country.
Now, as we continue to mark this day, much as it is the adult population that will be largely participating in these activities, we cannot go without talking about children when it comes to peace in our country. Looking at the fact that education for the better part of the last 2 years was affected, children are heavily affected. Whenever we have any instability where peace is involved in our country, children consequently feel the ripple effect of decisions that we make as adults. How are you also tailoring this message of peace in a way that children understand that they are the future of maintaining this calm and peace that we are experiencing in our country at this time?
We will have some children participating in the commemoration of this day, but just to respond to your question, we have a program called Peace Clubs, where we take messages of peace into clubs in high schools and also primary schools. And the reason why we have this program, which is an ongoing program that has been undertaken by the Commission over the last 10 years, the reason why we have it is because ultimately for us to have a peaceful country, for us to have durable peace, we must all embrace the values of peace and also inculcate in all generations, and especially the young one, and starting with children, we inculcate the values of peace. We ensure that we inculcate a culture of peace and also the culture of nonviolence. If we start this process, as we are doing with the children, as they go to high school, as they discuss about how they disagree in school, if they embrace nonviolent ways of dealing with their disputes in school, if they use the mechanisms that are established in school, that culture will grow with them. And as even they grow up to become big older people, as they get positions in society and in leadership, they will always be, their normal or their default mode will be to embrace nonviolent methods of dealing with dispute, and also to embrace the values of peace, tolerance, and nonviolence. So you are very right. This particular campaign of building a culture of peace in Kenya has to be integrated within the children, within the young youth population, and also among the adult generation. And last year, as we were working under the Election Bill and Norma Roadmap, as a commission, we had a very important event in Nairobi where we brought different young people from all the counties in Kenya, and also Council of Elders. And they were engaged in what we are calling intergenerational dialogue to advance peace and reconciliation in Kenya. And in that particular meeting, you could tell that both generations are required in order for us to build a culture of peace. You have the older generations who will give us our culture, the riches of our culture in terms of dispute resolution, but you also have the younger generation who have been equipped with modern skills of mediation, negotiation, and reconciliation. And that mix, that intercultural, intergenerational mix, is what we require as a pillar for building durable peace across the country. So it is something that will touch all generations, starting with children, women, young people, and also older people. Once we all embrace that, then we will have the ingredients for what we call durable peace.
All right. Now, as we close this conversation, you could give us just very briefly your closing remarks in regards to your call to action message to the larger population of Kenya, those that will not be there in Eldoret to mark the celebrations with you, but how they can also participate in this day. Very briefly.
I think the message for Kenya is just as we've come out of a very difficult election peacefully, we must now guard jealously that peace. And it will not only be, we are active only during elections to work about peace, to talk about peace. Peace is something that has to be a daily endeavor. It is something that you do on a daily basis as you wake up, as you relate with your colleagues, as you relate with your family, and so on. So I want us now to say, as a country, never again shall we take peace for granted. Never again shall we kill each other on the basis of ethnicity because of politics, and that Kenya will always be a leader in peace and will always be leading in ensuring that all processes in our country follow the rule of law, and where there is a dispute, we follow the mechanism that is established by our institutions.
All right. Thank you so much for making time to be with us this morning. We have been speaking with Sam Corner. He is a commissioner at the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, and he is also a conflict resolution, governance, and stability expert. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, and have a happy International Day of Peace.
Happy International Day to you.
Build peace.
All right.
Thank you.
Asante sana. Again, the theme for this year's International Day of Peace is End Racism, Build Peace. This is a day that will be marked in Eldoret Town, Uasin Gishu County today, but we are all called to mark this day. It is a day that is celebrated globally on the 21st of September, a day where the United Nations calls all countries together for a 24-hour period. Ceasefire, put your arms down, no violence whatsoever. So we do hope you participate in this day in any shape, manner, way, or form that you are able to. That brings us to a close of this conversation, but do stay with us. We have so much more lined up for you. We'll take a very quick breather. We will be right back.
Ana rabbukum, na mie ni Mola wenu, wattaquni, muniogope mimi, bimtithali awamiri, ili kwa kutekeleza amri yangu, wajinabi zawajiri, na muepuke yale nimekataa.
Kunazo dua ambazo Muislamu anafaa kutekeleza ama kuzisoma wakati ambapo anatekeleza shughuli katika maisha yake. Kuna dua ambazo unafaa kusoma wakati unapoamka, wakati unapoingia msalani, na wakati ambao unaenda kulala, na pia katika shughuli zozote zingine. Na pia biidhnillahi ta'ala ufaa kufahamu kuwa kuna dua ambayo Muislamu anafaa kuomba wakati anapotaka kufanya maamuzi, na dua hii yafahamika kama istikhara.
Songea Songea tukupashe na zile ambavyo vitakupa tabasamu tosha.
Hana mapenzi wala mahaba, mtoto mbaya sana huyu. What did you just say?
Sio tamthilia tu.
And why you're saying that
Ni tamthilia tosha.
Alinishika hivi. What?
Sio burudani tu, ni burudani tosha.
It is the day that the Lord has made.
Na sinema bomba.
Enda kabisa kama uelewi kitu inafaa uelewe.
Na mada za kusisimua. KBC Channel 1, shirika la utangazaji Kenya.
A lowly palace servant calling the shots. Do you think we'll be afraid of you?
We're not afraid of you. You're all barbarians. You're all so uncivilized.
People only know that you're living here with me, and it isn't a good look. Don't you think?
If I want to live here, I can live here. And you're going to be my wife. I don't care what they think.
They told me that our rules are ridiculous. In their eyes, if you're within their borders, love is all that matters. They don't care about the rules.
What? The first trial happened at Skywall. Could it be he is here regarding Mars' whereabouts? I need to be careful.
She doesn't want to get in touch with anyone, and I'll have to ask you not to tell anyone that she's living with me.
Whom did you tell that I don't want to see anyone?
Just tell me what it is, sweetheart. Come on, tell me what you want.
A murderer? Where is that murderer? Where is that evil woman who killed my Alfonso? Where is she?
You don't deserve anything, got it? So that it won't come as a surprise later, Nuria. I want you to know that I'm taking you out of my will and you're not getting a cent from me. Did you get that, my dear daughter?
Over between us. I'm done. We are done.
You cannot throw away what we have.
Unajua kuhusu dili yako na Leo.
Nani mwingine sasa kwa mimi?
Jackie, bora mahusiano yetu yaishe tu. Katika hii nyumba kuna kaupepo kanaharibu mapenzi ya watu. Yaani sina ruhusa hata pia kuangalia saa.
Sasa ni kipi wewe kinachokufanya uangalie saa yako kama sio kazi yako?
And I think my mom doesn't like Kingsley.
Welcome back. Now let's talk about matters economy and politics today on The Viewpoint. Let's talk about post-election economic recovery, something that touches every person's life. And when you talk about shilling, basically you're talking about everyone's life. So today I have got two gentlemen. I'm expecting CEO of Jenga Credit Limited, who will be joining us shortly. But in studio I have got Engineer Victor Okuna, who is, or let me start with Rufus Kamau, who is a lead markets analyst at FX Pesa. Next to me I have Engineer Victor Okuna, who is an energy expert. Gentlemen, welcome to the studio. When you talk about money, I know it touches both of you.
Yeah.
How does it touch you? Starting with you, Victor.
I'm Victor Okuna, as just you've introduced, energy experts. And also, maybe you didn't say, I also ran for Senate Migori County.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
all right. Congratulations. You had a race.
Yeah, I had a race, but I did make it. So I'm back to the normal business.
No problem. Karibu.
So the business we are doing is about the renewable energy. And when we talk of renewable energy, is about the buying and selling of renewable products, like solar. So any adjustments on the products is costly, especially to us, the constructors. So we really want a case where we also check the cost of fuel and also the cost of the renewable energy. Is this sustainable to the economy that we are in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll get to the details on matters to do with renewable energy, which is quite important as well. But Rufus, let's talk about matters economy. What is the state of economy, generally speaking, after an election? We still moving, from the remnants of politics. Kenyans are still getting used to the norm as we speak. But what is generally the state of economy?
Thank you for the question. Personally, I've been working as an analyst. So our main focus has been on investments and how you can diversify, look for opportunities where you can build yourself individually or as a corporate. So when I look at the Kenyan economy and what we've gone through, especially during the COVID-19 period, I would still say we are in a recovery. It's a difficult task when things were just starting to shape up. We experienced now the elections. There was a lot of slowdown in business. But now, after the peaceful elections, we are starting to see things shape up. However, a lot more is dependent on the incumbent administration. So whatever policies they implement will be very instrumental in the direction that the economy takes. So as for now, if you look at what we have, interest rates, so far so good. The central bank has maintained low rates since COVID, 7%, recently spiked to 7.5%. But inflation is becoming a big concern, especially currently standing at 8.5%. So consumer prices have been going up. They are weighing up, especially on consumer budgets. So right now, I think it's a big challenge to the new government to address the rising
And of course,
inflation.
that has a spiral effect to the common mwananchi.
Yes.
So it's how long is it going to be?
Hard to tell. If you look at the cause of this inflation, majorly the rising commodity prices, it's global. So if you look at oil, has been going up for the last 2 years. The lowest prices we saw was around April 2020. Since then, the general curve has been going up, say for the last 1 or 2 months. So as you look at the geopolitical situation in Russia, Ukraine, it's causing a lot of shortages in terms of supply side to oil. And this is affecting global demand. So we are not just the ones experiencing shortages in terms of energy, that is petroleum. It's happening globally, and it's also affecting our products. So being a net importer, if a company, whether it's located in China, whether it's located in Europe or the US, is experiencing higher energy costs, that cost is pushed forward to the product. So when that product lands in Kenya, it already comes as imported inflation, and it's weighing on the common mwananchi, where they have to spend more on the consumer products.
You know what you've just raised, perhaps I would say that a layman might not understand how the fuel prices will go up, the cost that the government will incur, that, at the end of the day will also have that impact on the common mwananchi, the final the consumer. Right now we are retailing at under 79 shillings, in Nairobi. But a common mwananchi will say, government wanatuwekea bei ya mafuta, imepandisha bei ya mafuta, but they don't know the geosocial whatever you're talking about in Ukraine and Russia that has a spiral effect. But you as an energy expert, how bad is the situation?
On the matters of energy, the prices is too high for the common mwananchi. Why? Because if you take, for example, the cost of diesel is around 160, 164. If you want to produce, let's say, tomatoes, you want to irrigate using diesel or petrol, you want to plow, you want to till, you want to transport it, then by the end of the day, you won't have any meaningful profit.
Yes.
So the cost of energy at the moment is not favorable for any kind of agricultural production. Even if it is just sugarcane plantation, because I come from the sugarcane plantation, when you start with plowing, tilling, and doing all the rest until you transport it to the factory, then the cost of production you've used. They always say that energy costs around 30 to 40%, but where we are currently, energy costs around 60 to 70% of the cost of production. So definitely we had a subsidy which was lifted by the president, the incoming president. I think that was in goodwill because people have really misused it.
Yes.
You find that there is a subsidy of a certain percentage, but this subsidy goes into some few individuals. What happens to fuel? Fuel is under a market called oligopolistic market. Oligopoly means it is a market that only has very few traders, not everyone. We call it the downstream. So for you to transport fuel from Saudi Arabia to here, there are very few companies that are doing that. So we call them oligopoly markets. So you cannot really go and start your own farm to do that. So these few companies now came in and took the space in Kenya. So when you give them some percentage in subsidy, then a good percentage goes into them through the cartels. So when the president looked at this and said, no, we cannot keep on giving subsidy that is not really affecting the Kenyans, it is part of it or chunk of it is going directly to the pockets of few cartels in Kenya. So that is why the subsidy was lifted. But as an energy expert, I think there are several taxes that should be actually lifted from this energy fuel. In a liter, you get almost 60 shillings of levies. So instead of us having subsidy, why can't you remove the subsidy, then you reduce the fuel levies from the diesel up to a point where we have now the balance.
Okay.
And actually, when he was talking about the markets, I'm a business person and I also read business. There's something we call kink demand curve is in business. Kink demand curve is where two markets are coming, the demand and the supply. So where you have a point of where they meet is where the demand the demand of the people is almost now equivalent to the market. So we need to have a point where the cost of diesel will be favorable to even those farmers, the hustlers down there, using the diesel to do their own agricultural activities. Yes. Otherwise, at the moment, where I am sitting, the cost of fuel is quite high for any substantial farming to take place.
You know, when you talk about fuel, we all know when you touch on fuel, general energy, everyone and everybody will feel that effect.
Yes.
So the government was proposing to have that subsidy or to regulate the cost of fuel in the country.
Yes.
How will the government regulate it without affecting the cost of importation, all right, as well as not interfering with the subsidy? So that from 179, let me start by saying, is there a point that the cost of fuel will come down? From 179, let's say to 140. Is it possible?
Yes, it's possible. Actually, Victor, if you look at the cost, the landing cost of super, it went down by 23%. So the fuel has actually went down from July to August. The fuel went down by 23%.
But it kept on increasing.
That one means that we had too much subsidy. So when the subsidy was removed, then the fuel was supposed to go too high. Then because the landing cost also went down, we didn't feel that much high. Otherwise, we could have been having fuel at around more than 211 shillings. So the landing cost of fuel at Mombasa actually went down. Petrol went down by around 23%.
Yes.
And then diesel went around between 10 and 20. So there was there was overall fuel decrease, the fuel cost decreased. But because we had too much subsidy on them, we removed the subsidy. Then even if you remove the subsidy, the fuel prices still went high because the subsidy was more than the amount of reduction of fuel at the landing cost.
I'll come back to that issue of subsidy because it seems that a majority of Kenyans do not understand the real importance of having a subsidy or removing it in totality.
Yeah, it's true.
I'll come back to that. But Rufus, how bad was economy during election, during the campaign period? Let's just give it a period of 6 months. How bad was it that now we can still have a spillover to post-election?
When it comes to the economy and when we weigh the economy in its entirety, we kind of lose the direction because some parts tend to be consistent. For instance, if you're farming, you don't slow down on your farming because there's elections. But then when you look at some other stuff, especially things like manufacturing, you're not sure about the demand that is going to be there over the next 1-2 months, especially when you're expecting an election. So in that case, you'll find that businesses will tend to slow down as they weigh the situation. So the business expectations tend to go down as a result of the history we have had in previous elections. So what we experience is that foreign investors were withdrawing a lot of the investments, looking to just stay safe for a period, not knowing what will happen. And then after the elections, then if things are good, then they come back. So with that withdrawal, there was less capital. Also, if you look at the lending side, if let's say you want a loan, you want to invest in some business,
bank will be hesitant.
Yes, the bank will not be very positive about it. And they are not sure about the next couple of months. So business really slowed down, especially in terms of production and also financing. So we took a big hit in terms of job creation in the market. It was slowing down, economic production was slowing down, and this led to the current situation that we have, where now we are starting to see as if we are growing, but in actual sense we are recovering from what you are not doing.
Yes. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, I still want us to talk about the issue of politics and economy. How are these two people connected? Or can we separate them so that at the end of the day, politics will take its center stage and economy will also grow without being hindered by politics or whichever the case may be? Let's take a break, gentlemen. We'll be right back after this break.
Songea tukupashe na zile ambavyo vitakupa tabasamu tosha.
Hana mapenzi wala mahaba, mtoto mbaya sana huyu. What did you just say?
Sio tamthilia tu.
And why you're saying that
Ni tamthilia tosha.
Alinishika hivi. What?
Sio burudani tu, ni burudani tosha.
It is the day that the Lord has made.
Na sinema bomba.
Kabisa kama uelewi kitu inafaa uelewi.
Na mada za kusisimua. KBC Channel 1, shirika la utangazaji Kenya.
Akili, this is Akili. Hey there, friends, what time is it?
What should Akili say to greet little lion?
Wow!
Can you read the word?
Oh! Don't worry, Bush Baby. You can draw it again.
Akili, Akili, this is Akili. She has a secret. Tell us, tell us. When the sun goes down, Akili goes to sleep, and she enters a world where all the animals speak.
Unaenda wapi?
Wanapiga wimbo yangu. Wanapiga wimbo yangu. Hiyo wimbo ni yangu.
Wewe na usitupotezee wakati hapa.
Nakataa.
Mnakaa ni wewe.
Sikuwa rada. Ona sikia sasa ndo niko rada.
Nakuuliza, mtu akitupa akili yake atoe kwa jichwa atupe, anapaki na nini?
Yule alikuwa ameweka kimongre mchini. Unacheki?
Mimi sielewi.
Situletee kufiatu kisi zako hapa.
Sikuwa na ramba dada mtu wangu. Si hata ulikuwa unacheki kundara. Sikuwa na ramba dada.
Mozimbiting.
Simbutu simbiti kuzombo toto.
Ozibitingala, simbitingi, besingla, samade ni wewe.
Nando nakwambiaje, ukirieu, machuda, makete na makwete.
Sasa wewe ngoja. Umeuliza nini?
Wewe, sitaki mchezo, unasikia?
Welcome back. In studio, I have two gentlemen, Engineer Victor Kuna and Rufus Kamau, helping me to understand, and you to understand what economy has in store for us after the politics. So, Rufus, let me just understand this. How do you connect politics and economy?
When it comes to the economy, especially our Kenyan economy, there are key drivers, the people, the workers like you and me. We do all the work when it comes to providing services, production, the farmer, the drivers, and so on. But then there are those economic policies that are implemented that affect the worker directly. So if, let's say, you're a farmer, you need financing, there are those people in the administration that will make policies that affect your access to finance. For instance, we have had several policies affecting, for instance, the CRB, interest rates from the central bank, and all that. So if the systems are not working and they are run by politicians, then they affect the worker directly.
Yeah.
So the policies that are being implemented by the administration, the legislature, they eventually influence the economy. So there is a direct relationship between the two.
Okay.
Yes.
Victor, you talked about the issue of subsidy, and perhaps for the sake of understanding the whole aspect, first of all, what is subsidy?
Thanks, Victor.
Because it's been talked over, from I don't know how many months ago we are doing this and that, this and that. And some people took it that it was a political statement. But economically speaking, what is it all about for the sake of common wananchi to understand?
So subsidy, Vic, is money you allocate somewhere to caution residents.
Yes.
So if I'm selling maybe unga at 100 shillings, because of tough economic conditions, I can decide that I give you a discount of 20 shillings. So these 20 shillings, I'm the one who pays out to the companies. So the government now comes in with some money. Then they give to the fuel marketers.
Yeah.
So the fuel marketers brings in fuel. Let's say if the landing cost is 100 shillings per liter, and because of the tough economic times we are in, the government comes in and tell the marketers, sell the fuel at 80 shillings. The difference of 20 shillings we will cater for. So that is exactly what the fuel subsidy is. So the fuel is supposed to be sold at like 211 shillings at the moment. But because of that high cost, the government comes in or chips in, brings in some money to the marketers and tell them, no, this the prices is too high. Kindly sell the fuel at around 179. So the rest of the difference, now the government sets in. So that is exactly what we call a subsidy. So from IPRA website, they get in some values here, the amount of the landing cost. In July, actually, the super petrol was 1,074.01. That is US dollars per cubic meters. Then in August 2022, it is 811. So therefore means that the landing cost actually, what I was saying before, has actually gone down in the universe. So the decrease is 24.31. So maybe in the near future, we may expect to see more decline in fuel prices. And then the diesel went down by 13.90 from 1,103 to 949.68 US dollars per cubic meters. So from what we have seen today, it therefore means that maybe we are only speculative that maybe from the next month or next months coming, we may start to see fuel prices going down. But I want to say something. Today we are observing the International Peace Day.
Yes.
That is very important. Why? Because the Ukraine and the Russian war has really made every prices to go down, to go up.
Exactly, almost globally.
Yes. So the moment we have a peace deal, then we'll start to see prices of very many commodities coming down.
Okay.
So we are only praying that the President Ruto, as our president now, they're having the meeting in US today, the 77th. Let them sit down and argue out the differences between Ukraine and Russia so that we can have stabilization of especially the fuel prices.
Okay.
The moment we have a stable fuel, then we'll have the economy that is more favorable to common mwananchi, so to a hustler like me and also a hustler like someone in Migori there.
And he's not calling himself a hustler. I'm just wondering what Rufus will call himself. Well, Rufus, is there hope for us as a nation? Because now people are still struggling to, get post-election, past the election period now. Economy is trying to, people are trying to get somehow getting used to the situation. Many people decided to go back to the village because of the fears and what have you.
Yes.
But is there hope?
Yes, there's hope. When you look at the economic model practiced by the previous administration versus the current one,
yes,
it seems like we are having a big shift. If you look at the fuel subsidy that you are having, the UNGA subsidy, by removing that, they're not just removing, they're actually repurposing the subsidy. So we know that the government doesn't do production. So it cannot easily fix supply.
Yeah.
So if there's a shortage of fuel and prices are going up, the government doesn't have some fuel aside that it can add to the market. So it has been just pushing more money to try and make sure that the prices remain low and people are able now to spend on other things. So when you look at the current economic model, they're trying to stimulate the supply side to make sure that the production is going up from the working people, and from there you'll see the fruits of that going up. So rather than having a lot of...
And there is a danger to that.
Yes.
I tend to think there's a danger to that. What if the final result is not positive?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, there's a risk to that.
Yes.
So when you look at what they are doing by pumping more money towards, let's say, subsidizing fertilizer versus subsidizing fuel, you realize that they're trying to boost production. And if you boost production, let's say the farmer has access to low-cost fertilizer, and then they expand their production, let's say for the next one season, then it seems like one season down the line, we'll have more food. And if this farmer has excess output, they'll have some output to sell, and they'll have some cash to afford fuel.
Yeah.
You see?
Yes.
So for now, between now and the next season, the economy will really suffer. We will be experiencing higher prices in, let's say, unga, higher prices in petrol. But let's say one season or one production cycle down the line, then people will have money in their pockets in order to afford these high products. Yeah. So it's a totally different model, but then it has to like induce pain before you start seeing the rewards.
Induce pain? Yes. Because at the end of the day, Kenyans are looking for some reprieve. But when you talk about induced pain, does it mean that we'll have to be a bit, more patient for us to enjoy the outcome? Victor?
Yeah, we'll have to be patient. But Vic, when we talk of the prices, especially of fuel that is now the elephant in the room, I think we need to look at the modalities on how to forgo about fuel. And as an energy expert and also renewable energy engineer, it is now high time for the President Ruto and the entire government to come up with modalities on how we can introduce electric cars to this country. Why? When you talk of supply and demand, when the supply is high, the cost always goes high. So the demand has, when you talk of demand, when demand fuel has gone exceedingly high, the number of cars coming into the country is there are very many per day. The only way that we can really avoid these mishaps in future is to ensure that we come up with policies that ensure that we go in green cars. In other countries, they have put a timeline that by 2030, I was reading an article that in US, there's a state, by 2030, all vehicles to be in that state should either be hybrid or electric. Why? Because hybrid cars consume less energy or less fuel, and electric cars consume zero fuel. So we actually, when we really want to sort out the issue of fuels on the demand and supply, then let us work on the modalities of ensuring that in the near future, even if it is 5 to 10 years, this government should come up with clear policies that puts a framework that by the end of this year, then we should have only either hybrid cars and electric cars being imported to this country. That one, we will have sorted out the issue of fuels, because now we will have less demand. The moment you have less demand to fuel, even in the market abroad, the moment we have less demand on fuel, then their prices go down. You remember in 2020, actually the barrel of fuel went to 30, it was around 30 US dollars per barrel. Why? Because the demand was too low and the supply was too high. For us to really get there, then we really need to get in a position where a good percentage, even if it is 30% of our cars on our roads are actually using electric cars. And the first thing that we need to do, our governors should ensure that the cars they're actually importing are purely electric. Why? Because the cars the governors are using within the county, they go maximum of 100 kilometers. So they can be charged overnight at the yards of the governors. The following day, they wake up, they go do their errands, and then come back. So we really need to see heads rolling. We need to see policies and frameworks that will ensure that this country goes green, and especially on the transport sector.
When you talk about the transport sector and the introduction of electric cars and hybrid cars, that will also call on the production aspect. I mean, the infrastructural bit of it. We see the BRT still struggling in Nairobi. We are not yet ready to hit it running, but because of the infrastructure.
But actually, I can say that in Kenya, we already have electric cars. So it's not a new thing. Actually, in Cabanas here, there's a company that converts these gasoline engines to electric cars and recharge them. There's nothing big in electric cars. It's just lithium batteries that need to be charged on high current. So when you talk of electric cars, it's not a huge...
It's all about the perception that we're having.
It's a perception.
Somebody will say,
No.
You know what I'm saying?
If a good electric cars will give you 300 miles. 300 miles is almost 580 kilometers. So why we need the counties to, first of all, introduce the electric cars is because every county will now have the charging points. So when you leave Nairobi, maybe you're going to Mombasa, then you can leave here up to Mtitandei, then you charge your car, rest there for 30 minutes because they are heavy charges. So a heavy charge means within 20 minutes, you have already injected almost 10 to 20 kilowatt hours. So I'm really up to the national government to come with policies and ensure that they in talk with the county government to abolish the importation of gasoline. I can assure you the fuel now is 179 shillings. Our counties will be buying this fuel of 179 at almost 300 shillings.
I'll still have that question back to you as an energy expert. Whether we have some projection at some point that Kenyans will still enjoy a lower fuel price. I'm just praying, you know, and you give me the possibilities of that happening. But when you look at the economy so far, Rufus, the SME is really struggling to get that stability they need right now. What would cushion them as we speak? We have the Hustler Fund that the President talked about. That will have to go through some legislative processes for it to be disbursed to the relevant consumers. But the SMEs, who are the biggest contributors in the economy, what can be done with an immediate effect to uplift them so that at the end of the day we have got some good living?
Good question here. When you look at the SMEs, over the past, let's say, 10 years, the last one administration's tenure, we have had a big challenge, and the challenge is clear. It's state capture, where the persons at the top capture all the resources that are instrumental to building capital. So when you look at the SMEs and what they really need, it's a couple of things. One, for instance, if you look at the Millennium Development Goals, you look at the Vision 2030, it's anchored around a couple of things. First is infrastructure. We saw infrastructure being implemented very well. We have a wide network of roads, so distribution channels are working really well. Our telecommunication networks are working well. If you look at Safaricom, has a big reach to any part of the country. Then when you look at financing, that's where our real challenge is. Previously, we had the rate caps. The rate caps were really tough. The commercial banks couldn't lend to the SMEs. Then we saw another big monster happening within the country, where the government had more appetite for debt compared to the SMEs. So there's money. Everything is funded by savings. So there's money lying around in savings, but the government wants this money more than the SMEs and more than the people. So you find that commercial banks would lend more to the government, and this was at some good rates, 12.5% in the last infrastructure bond. So why would the government give you, Victor, a loan at 14%, considering the risk in the market, versus giving that money to the government? So you found that commercial banks were lending more money to the government, crowding out the SMEs. So the SMEs will not have access to finance. So
continue.
So that was one part of the problem we are having in this country. So these SMEs were forced to operate within lower tier financial institutions. So instead of going to a commercial bank, they would probably go to a SACCO, where they would organize themselves. And if you have savings, here are savings, then we pull them together, and then the SACCO gives that as a loan to one of the contributors. So in that case, they would have some level of financing, but still that wasn't enough, because if the SACCO is lending from a pool, then it means that once one person gets a loan, then you don't get the loan until I repay.
So which means that really affected the lending rates at the commercial banks?
So down the line, you realize that now that the middle tier is not workable, then the SMEs and the people were forced now to move on to the mobile apps. And the mobile apps are largely unregulated, offering very high interest rates. I wouldn't call them interest rates. It's more or less like theft. Like the rates are too high. So you realize that they are not sustainable. It's not something you can work with to build a business. So if you get, let's say, a mobile app where you, let's say, get 20, 100K within an instant, but the interest rates are too high and the repayment term is too short.
Yes.
1 month.
Yeah. Some are even 2 weeks.
Yes. That cannot be sustainable, cannot be used to grow or develop SMEs. So the real solution we need is low interest rates. So if SMEs can access loans at low interest rates, that could be, let's say, the commercial bank rates, the same rates that Safaricom is getting from the commercial banks, that would work. And the other function is the long-term nature of the loans. So if you get a loan, let's say to bootstrap your business, and they need you to repay in the next 1, 2, 3 months, then that's not sustainable. We have seen it happen with the lenders who are lending for mobile car loans. They lend you 1 year loan, and then within a very short period of time, you're unable to pay for 1, 2 months, and very fast they reclaim your car. So it has been happening all over the country. If you look at the newspapers, most of the pages are just reselling cars, okay?
Yes.
So in order for us to have some sustainable development in SMEs, then we need some longer-term loans that allows the flexibility to grow.
Spread. So how creative can Kenyans be? Because at this particular point, it seems that going to the bank, you'll have to have some high interest rate, of course, and some repayment period is slightly shorter.
Yes.
How can Kenyans be at this particular point so that at the end of the day, before you go to a bank or any financial institution to get a loan, then you can still have your business up and running? Victor?
To me, on actually what my brother said, on the loans on SMEs, the loans currently by the banks are quite high. Actually, if you're doing a business and the level of business that we have currently is not sustainable. I'd wish a condition where the government really partner with SACCOs.
Yes.
To ensure that SACCOs give soft loans to our SMEs. Why? Because SACCOs gives loans at almost low rates. So for really SMEs to have meaningful business with returns, then the government through SACCOs, I think we have SACCO departments, should really encourage Kenyans to form SACCOs so that we can take loans. I'm a business person, I'm an engineer, but doing my own business. And I think SACCOs have really made me to do business. Is a SACCO you can take $1 million for business, then you return the money within 3 months, and you pay them 30,000, 1%. So for really SMEs in this country to have meaningful business, then we really need to either have partnership between the SACCOs and the government to give them some money. Then the SMEs can take loans at a lower rate from the SACCOs for us to be really to boost our business. Then the only challenge that we have with SACCOs is the issue of guarantees. It's a problem because sometimes you don't have a guarantee and you need 3 guarantees. So if the government wants to really boost the SACCOs, the SMEs, then they also need to talk to the SACCOs to really review this issue of guarantees. It's either the government or anybody to really be the guarantees of these SMEs, so that in case of there's a default, then that body should now really come into action and really see what's happening with this person who has not paid or repaid his loan. But the best thing for us to really have meaningful business for the SMEs, then we need to have the SACCO side, or then we need to have an organization that can give SACCOs a loan that equivalent to the SACCOs, so that when you have a loan for 6 months, you don't pay the heavy dues or the heavy money that the current banks are really paying.
Rufus, how creative can we get as a nation?
First of all, I would like to mention as a FX Pesa, working with a regulated financial markets broker in Kenya, we are big in terms of financial literacy. So we are doing all these programs where we are educating people about investing, understanding personal finance and where they can invest, especially considering the current environment of lack of access to capital and also the high interest rates, high inflation and all that. So in terms of getting creative, there's a couple of things. I've seen a lot of young investors who are looking to go for offshore investments in order to caution themselves from the shilling. So if, for instance, you're looking at, let's say, investing in the stock market, you realize that if you invest in the Kenyan stock market, we have under 100 companies trading in the Nairobi Securities Exchange. And to be honest, the top companies that are doing really well, they're under 10. Most of these other guys are struggling. So if you widen the net and you look at other companies, like top global companies that are doing well in the world, then you have the opportunity through innovation, financial innovation, where you can buy these assets and hold them simply by the click of a button from your phone. So it makes it simpler for you to, let's say, have a retirement fund invested in an asset that is, let's say, dollar-backed rather than Kenya shilling-backed. It also gives you the Forex advantage. Let me make it simpler. If you look at the exchange rate between the Kenya shilling and the dollar, at the beginning of the pandemic, January 2020, we were around 100 shillings per dollar. Right now, as we speak, it's 120 per dollar. So let's say at the beginning of the pandemic, we realized, oh, things are doing bad. Let me do some investments in a couple of foreign companies. And you did that at 100. So for every dollar, you are buying at 100. So right now, if you, let's say, made some good returns over the period of 2 years, and now you decide to reinvest back in Kenya, when you're converting back your profits, now you're doing it at 120. So you are shielded from that level of depreciation of the currency against the dollar. So that's one of the creative ways I've seen Kenyans do in terms of addressing. But that is just a chosen few. I'm talking about my kinsmen back in the village. Yes. You're talking about Forex exchange and having offshore accounts and what have you. Yes. Just to cushion the SME. Yes. So there's no like one single solution that fits all. For instance, I had written an article that was yesterday on the Business Daily about hedging your investments via the futures market. So for instance, if let's say you're a coffee farmer, you produce coffee and then you, let's say, sell in the market, you realize that coffee prices can be very volatile. So by the time you're planting, and let's say you're trying to get a loan from a bank to scale up your operations, you are unsure of where you're going to sell, you are unsure of the price you're going to sell at. So you can lock in a price now for the coffee that you're going to harvest 6, 8 months or even 1 year down the line. So you can use the financial markets to lock in through the futures market, and that benefits you by giving you a specific price that you're going to sell. Okay, let's take a break. When you come back, we talked about the issue of credit and how creative you can get, and talk about SACCOs and credit institutions. Joining us shortly is Peter Mashere, who is the CEO of Jenga Credit Limited. He's going to tell us how we can get credit from Jenga Credit Limited from here, without being given high interest rates. Right? Good. Okay, let's take a break. We'll be right back with more.
Are you a holder of unclaimed financial assets? Take advantage of the Finance Act 2022 moratorium on penalties and interests. Surrender any unclaimed financial assets in your possession today. Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority. Receive, safeguard, reunite.
It's over between us. I'm done. We are done.
You cannot throw away what we have.
Najua kusudi yako na leo.
Nani mwingine sota kwa mimi?
Jackie, bora hama uhusiano wetu yaishe tu. Katika hii nyumba kuna kaupepo kanaharibu mapenzi ya watu. Yaani sina ruhusa hata pia kuangalia sana.
Sasa ni kipi wewe kinachokufanya uangalie hiyo saa yako kama sio kazi yako?
And I think my mom doesn't like Kingsley.
Days will come and days will go. The season change.
Ana rabbukum, na mie ni Mola wenu. Fattaquni, muniogope mimi. Bimtithali awamiri, ili kwa kutekeleza amri yangu. Wajinabi zawajiri, na muepuke yale nimekataa.
Kunazo dua ambazo Muislamu anafaa kutekeleza ama kuzisoma wakati ambapo anatekeleza shughuli katika maisha yake. Kuna dua ambazo unafaa kusoma wakati unapoamka, wakati unapoingia msalani, na wakati ambao unaenda kulala, na pia katika shughuli zozote zingine. Na pia biidhnillah ta'ala wafaa kufahamu kuwa kuna dua ambayo Muislamu anafaa kuomba wakati anapotaka kufanya maamuzi, na dua hii yafahamika kama istikhara.
في تحيات الوجود محمد في ابتهالات.
Thomas, after the hell the Samoan werewolf Fatu put to you, you wish to enter in again. Abandon. You want to take that risk with your family sitting at home, worried about if Daddy is going to be all right. Your children's tears are going to be on your head, and Fatu's hand is going to be on your throat.
Tom Lawler, this ain't no Figure 4 podcast.
Back. I'm now joined in studio by Peter Mashare, who is the CEO of the Jenga Credit Limited. We are bringing him on board so that we can understand how can a common mwananchi access credit and just the literacy bit of it on how we can spur our economy as a nation just from the elections. Mr. Masharia, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Karibu sana. The same question I started with them. How bad is the economy from your own perspective as CEO running an institution? How bad is the economy?
I will quote what the governor said. I think 2 days ago when he was talking to the National Assembly members, he said the economy is not bad. The finances are not bad. The challenge that they are facing is that we are living beyond our means. Whatever we are collecting is almost what is being spent to pay salaries and meet development and other recurrent expenditure. So ideally, we just need to reorganize our finances because a government is not supposed to keep money in savings and maybe projects or salaries or other expenditure is not paid. We should then enhance projects or organizations or corporates like NSSF and encourage Kenyans to save more. If you are saving 200, you can now save 1,000. But in terms of the government account at CBK, it's like a current account. It should not be having money lying idle. And maybe in the northern part of Kenya, cows need water.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm quite interested in understanding how the commercial banks, whether commercial banks in Kenya can easily sustain our economy. Leave alone borrowing, the foreign borrowing that you are getting from the IMF, from the World Bank, and what have you, even from other jurisdictions.
Yes.
Can we sustain our economy?
Yes, we can sustain our economy.
How possible?
It's very possible by, number one, making sure that all state corporations, including yourselves here, operate on a commercial basis. What I mean by that is that you should be generating some profit. You see the challenges we've been facing with the KQ. It's a state corporation. The government is only supporting it, as opposed to it. As opposed to it
carrying passengers, goods, and maybe parcels to generate an income, and at the end of the year they do a check to the exchequer. So it's a culture that needs to be cascaded down even to the counties. A county like Turkana should identify maybe a resource or some activities that it as a county can operate without extending its hand to the national treasury for funding. Yes.
Okay.
We need to put all organizations as profit centers.
Yes.
And the economy will thrive. Yes.
Rufus, what do you think?
I think, yes, we can manage. We just have to restructure the kind of policies that we implement.
Yes.
And make sure that the investments are from the bottom towards the upper side. Yeah. So, for instance, if you look at the financial access, for big corporations, they're able to access finance, but the common mwananchi is not accessing finance. Big corporations are getting finance at low interest rates. The common mwananchi is getting finance at very high interest rates.
Yes.
So if kind of reverse that function, then we'll be seeing ourselves moving in the right direction. So focusing on the base inputs or base factors of production, especially electricity. Electricity is currently very high. If you look at fuel, one of the reasons that fuel is very expensive is not actually the international markets, but it's the KRA being over-reliant on the tax that it collects from fuel. So when we see a lot of over-reliance on this product, which is a base product. If you want to do any production in this country, you need energy. Okay? So when we see that kind of over-reliance, then it weighs down on the producer, the bottom level. So if we kind of reduce these base products or the cost of these base products like fertilizer, we address the cost of electricity, transport, then we'll start seeing ourselves moving in the right direction.
Okay. Victor, why is the cost of electricity so high? Somebody would say they bought a token worth 500 shillings, they got 31, I think a few weeks ago, and right now it's gone to around 25 or so?
22.
22?
Yeah.
Why that sudden change?
Vic, we generate free power. Actually, the power generated from Kindaruma, the Seven Forks, and also the geothermal, they are free power actually. The only cost that is there is the losses. When you transport power from Kengen to Thika substation, there are some losses that, they are not much. But the inefficiencies at Kenya Power is why we see the high cost of power.
So the common mwananchi is
actually the common mwananchi is
efficiency at the headquarters.
And let me just explain this.
Yes.
When you go to Kenya, KPLC yard, the substation or yard, even office, even a new one, 6 months, you'll find faulty transformers there. Just 6 months or even 1 year, you'll find a heap of transformers on the grass. They are faulty. Why? One, Kenya Power, think they procure substandard transformers. So you go install it there, the area. Now, as we speak, every village has a faulty transformer that was installed by REA. Even in my village, back in Migori there, I've been to Riri, I've been to Ntimaru. There are several transformers that are faulty. They are faulty because they cannot really maintain the quality standards or the quality parameters that a transformer should be. Then two, the rogue technicians. You can find Kenya Power installing for you a meter today. Then next year, the same Kenya Power comes to you and tell you that this meter is not supposed to be here. It's supposed to be in Wajir. When the same meters were installed by the workers and the contractors of Kenya Power. So why Kenyans are paying so much tariffs is because of the inefficiencies in Kenya Power. I can assure you that the cost of maintenance of Kenya Power, buying a transformer, replacing it, those costs are transferred to the final consumer. So the moment we will have a government that can have a very efficient a very efficient Kenya Power with very low illegal connections. And I can assure you we lose almost, was it more than 1 gigawatts on power through illegal connections, where someone is went and tapped power from the poles and distributed to the whole estate and is not paying. All those costs are transferred to the final customer. Okay. Then the last thing, you remember we still use Kipevu is still a geothermal. I mean, it's still a thermal. So we are still producing electricity using fuel. I really don't understand why Kenya has a lot of sun. We can even do 2 gigawatts of sun, of solar power. But we still have to manage Kipevu thermal power station that uses fuel. And you see, now the fuel costs have really gone high. Yeah. So definitely with the fuel still going high, that cost of fuel, and in your tariff or in your tariffs, you'll find the fuel part. So that one means that we are still generating the power we use here on fuel. I really wish the state corporations, like even the KBC, where you are, can you start by ensuring that you go green? Just ensure that the whole facility, even if it cannot go the whole solar, but a part of it, a chunk of maybe 40 or 50% of your power is gotten directly from the sun. Then the rest of it is gotten directly from the grid. With that one, we'll now reduce the amount of power we take from the grid, and I'm very sure Kenya Power will now shut down those thermal.
That's an idea that we'll probably propose to the MD if he's watching. If we can go green or use solar energy, well and good, why not? But let me come to you, Peter. How did the elections affect, the lending rates and even the uptake of credit from different institutions? For example, where you work.
Well, the election cycle of our country is usually it goes down every 5 years. Yes. And what I mean by that is most business people and investors shy away from investing in our country within that period, electioneering period. If, for example, you go to, like most of our customers are SMEs, MSMEs. Very few of them were importing goods. Very few of them were stocking up. Just because of that unforeseen, unpredictable electioneering period. Yes. So when we import less, when we stock up less, when we do less trade, even the government collects less money. We lend to fewer customers, and by extension, less money circulates within the economy. Or if you look at the trade amounts, or the amounts involved in trade, they are substantially very low. And my request and my proposal is that we need to come up with a solution which can ensure that there's constant flow of business activities. We need to avoid a situation whereby people think that our elections are very unpredictable, or they will turn violent, or people will lose their stock or their goods or the investments during the electioneering period.
Before you came in, the two gentlemen said that the only problem that SMEs or Kenyans in general suffer from is the high number of guarantors. I also belong to a SACCO. I'll not tell you, maybe, But then the number of guarantors for you to take a credit facility, whether I'm SME, I need to stock my business. I'll have to look for 3, 4, 5 people for me to get facility. Can something be done generally, as we speak, probably as a short-term measure, to entice Kenyans to take more credit facility from this credit, from the SACCOs, from the commercial institutions? Can something be done?
Definitely it can be done, because I also belong to a SACCO, Kenya Banker SACCO, and for me to take a facility, they will need guarantors. At the Jenga Credit, we don't ask for any guarantor. Let's start with that. And that's why we are fortunate to get more customers, because our model is slightly different. Yeah. And if you look at the new digital lending act, the one that CBK is trying to encourage, they're encouraging a situation whereby a lender will not be calling guarantors. So that by the end of the day, it is it is an individual who has borrowed who you should engage. And well, for that model to be feasible, we need to encourage maybe the aspect of providing security, so that your security can act as a guarantor. But it will be an uphill task, especially for the micro, small organizations, because very few of them have that capability of owning a security, maybe a title deed or logbook, and some of them are not even employed, because the other option is to borrow against you or get a guarantee from your employer, and your employer will not also be called to say that you're not paying, or something unfortunate is happening in terms of your payment system. Yes.
All right, Rufus, just before I come to you, Victor, the government released 3.6 billion shillings subsidy for the fertilizer.
Yes.
So let me just ask you, why give 3.6 billion shillings subsidy? Why not just cash transfer?
The biggest contributor to our inflation right now is food prices.
Yes.
Second, after food prices, is fuel. So the food prices are not imported. A majority of the food we consume is something that we actually produce. So it's a supply side problem. So when we fix supply, when there is sufficient food flowing within the country, then food prices will definitely go down. So by subsidizing fertilizer, the government is trying to stimulate production. So one season down the line, we will have food. And when we have food, then prices go down.
Yes.
And the pressure on the common mwananchi will be a little bit lower.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's the whole essence of having the subsidy on but is it sustainable at the end of the day? Or it is just a precautionary measure, short term, and then after we are stable enough as a country, then it will be lifted?
I would like to quote David D., who is the Chief Economic Strategist for the new administration. So he mentioned that they're looking to subsidize or provide finance to the agricultural producers, but then right now the government doesn't have money. So it will take some time before they have money. So as a precautionary stage, instead of giving money to the farmers, which they don't have, first of all, they subsidize the fertilizer and stimulate production for the next one season. By then, they will have implemented structures through the new Ministry of the Cooperatives and SMEs to make sure that there is a way to finance the agricultural industry without them having to pay high interest rates to the commercial banks.
Yes.
So he mentioned that even the big economies, they don't let the agricultural industry depend on the commercial bank sector because the loans can be quite expensive and they will eat into their returns. So they want to really strengthen the agriculture, which is the base of our economy. Yes.
Okay. Victor?
I had something to say on what the CEO talked about, sustainability on the economy. What I want to say is, Vic, you cannot sustain economy when you are a consumer. You must be either a producer or a manufacturer. And therefore, this government must just come up with initiatives to ensure that we become a manufacturing country. If we just say that we are going to be producers, we buy everything, 95% we import, then on sustainability of economy, we will not really achieve. So the first thing, actually, currently, it is only flowers and also Magadi soda, those two, that is earning us revenues externally. Only those two. But look at how much we import. It's almost 98%. So for us to really have a sustainable economy, then this government, with President Ruto, they must have to really sit down and formulate how we are going to have serious manufacturing companies, serious manufacturing industries, and that will only be possible when they really have total control of fuel. Why? You see, scrap metal will be taken from Turkana, then it will be shipped to from Mombasa to China to go and be remolded back to plate and then be shipped again to Kenya. When you realize that whole cost is still cheaper than someone who could have done the same job here in Kenya. That is because the fuel in China is a bit low. So you can do all your manufacturing industries in China, ship the goods all the way from China, and still beat the prices of Kenyans here. So the president really has to work on the economy of manufacturing. We have to be producers, we have to be manufacturers, and anything that will ensure that we produce goods at a lower rate than the imported goods, so that we also earn revenues from
see,
that.
how long will Kenyans, should we wait for us to start feeling some kind of, some reprieve?
Well, that one is a very... It will depend so much on the
projection.
Yeah, it will depend with the team that is the president is consulting. Because like what my colleague has said, it's very true, and it's a fact that our balance of trade is off. And that's why I think that's why the Ministry of Education came up with a new curriculum for education, the CBC. If you look at the developed states like Singapore, Taiwan, Malaysia, and even China, what has made them to be producers and manufacturers and industrialists is ensuring that at least everybody knows their skill. If you go to China, there are so many cottage industries at various homes. Because like most of the items we import, the small items for children, the small watches, electronic items, most of them are manufactured from cottage industries, from homes. And that's why you find China is able to export a lot. And that is a model maybe informed the Ministry of Education to develop the CBC curriculum, so that if we can come up with a manufacturing state and export a lot to offset our balance of trade, which is geared towards more import than export. We only export coffee, a few flowers, and some tea. Then on the subsidy. The subsidy, my personal view, we need to consult wider, because now, if for example you only give subsidy for maize, what happens to the plight of that farmer in Northeastern who does cows, or somebody in Mombasa who only does fishing? How will they benefit? And then another challenge that will come about from that subsidy is if I think the Ministry of Meteorological Department yesterday issued a cautionary statement on the probability of rains failing. So you can imagine we've pumped in 4 billion into the soil for a crop that won't get rain. That's basically, we are staring at a situation whereby we don't have funds to spend. Then we've spent 4 billion, which has gotten lost. So the Kenya Kwanza consultant needs to consult widely. We are available to offer free consultancy and give them better advice, better strategies, so they can ensure that we all succeed. We don't do single-handed decisions that will plunge everybody into. But
simply speaking, CEO, do Kenyans have some sense of hope?
Yeah, Kenyans Kenyans are resilient, hopeful, and I believe
that we mutate. We can adopt any situation pretty fast,
very fast.
Yes,
and I believe for those of them who are listening to us, they will consult widely, because if you look at Northeastern, it is now in dire need of even the 3 billion they are putting in fertilizer, than even taking to that billion to fertilizer. I think they should even do boreholes faster in Northeastern to save the situation.
Depends with the water level there. Just before, there's a statement that actually is on the front page of the Standard, which was this from the CBK boss. He said, and let me quote, "I want to assure you that we have adequate foreign exchange." All right, and what was happening is that in the past 2 to 3 months, we had people who were trying to bring us back to Goldenberg. That is one. Two, Central Bank of Kenya governor told MPs that a golden bank-like scheme was hatched by some rogue banks during the heated political season that led to shillings slumped to historic lows. So it's not about the dollar. It's about some few individuals. Who is going to cater for this? Coming to you, Rufus.
I think it's not confirmed. What he meant is that we almost got there. So Golden Bag, it's basically an allegation that there was pressure to print more Kenya shillings. Yeah. So looking at that, if there was an actual pressure, and these are a speculation, then that was a bad policy because it basically devalues the value of the labor within the economy. So if it actually happened, then that was bad. Maybe it was the one causing the difference between the central bank rate and the banks that you would find on the streets. We were doing 125 shillings to the dollar, but then if you check online on the CBK rates, it was somewhere around 119, 120. So that huge difference may have had a hit as a result of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Victor?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the fertilizer subsidy, the 3.6 billion, just as he said. It will be of no use for you to pump in 3.6 billion shillings on a dry land. You understand? That
Exactly.
you have 3.6 billion on fertilizers, then you dump it on a soil that is totally dry. It's totally not there. Actually, to me, I will really propose to the Kenya Kwanza government to really look at the irrigation. Though it's a bit expensive because of the KPLC, but we really need to look at the model of, even if it is also subsidizing the cost of solar, so that those who wants to do irrigation. Yesterday I was in Makueni, Nikima. I found a number of, actually I went to do a survey there for solar installation, for water pump. Where we are going to, in the next 5 years, I think irrigation will be taking the chunk of our agriculture. I just want to wish that this Kenya Kwanza government also comes in and assists the farmers to either design or come in ways where they can install solar to do the irrigation. Large farms, large areas of this country is totally dry. So we will pump in too much fertilizers on a dry land that will yield us nothing. I was in Wajir early this year, and actually we installed a solar that is only used to grow grass. No, maybe some areas there's too much grass, but in Wajir, there are some guys who are only growing grass for their animals, and they are only growing grass using the irrigation. So if we can really come up with modalities where we can assist farmers to go green in irrigation, so that we have huge farms on irrigation and powered by solar, then this 3.6 billion subsidy on fertilizer will have a meaning. But at the moment where we have 3.6 billion shillings with no rain or with less rains, then you're going to pump in so much money into the soil, but with very little output.
All right. I'm told we are coming to an end, but let me just read your comment here. There's a gentleman who asked a question. He's called Stephen Mwangi. Stephen said that, I'm watching. I now know that subsidy isn't a permanent solution to the high cost of living. These economists need to be given a chance to advise government for smooth running of economy. That is Stephen. Then Kipiegon Tumuising Isaiah says that, can you ask them to explain on how to revocate on election? How to revocate on election? Rufus?
I don't quite get it.
I don't get it. Tell him to explain how to revocate on election. I don't know. Probably he was trying to move from election and just have to stabilize in terms of economy and stabilize the economic aspect. But coming to you as CEO, when we have a number of commercial institutions, commercial banks in Kenya, the same question I think I asked: are we able to sustain ourselves without having international debt, borrowing? Or
yes.
to what rate?
Definitely yes. Although to some extent it should be the funds that commercial banks have should be geared or should be lent to the population, to the businesses. Because once the government competes with the public to borrow from the same commercial banks, commercial banks will tend to deal with the government more because it's safer as opposed to lending the money to the MSMEs. Yes.
So, Rufus, probably that will be like your closing remarks. The issue of lending and borrowing, how can this be rationalized so that at the end of the day, the lender and the borrower, all of them at the same page? I know that would have gone to the CEO because he's more directly to that, but you can as well speak it anyway.
Yes. So currently, the government doesn't have a lot of money to stimulate lending. I think the best way or our best chance of getting out of this economic slump is getting foreign direct investments. So if you get foreign direct investments, especially in financing, this would drive excess supply of finance within the economy, and people would be able to get longer term financing that is more sustainable at lower rates. So I think that's the direction we need to take as a country.
Yes.
Yes.
Victor, in terms of energy?
Yeah, I have some...
It affects all of us here.
Yeah, I have some 3 issues here. One, on the issue of subsidy, I really wish the government to give more subsidy on diesel. Actually, we can remove the subsidy on petrol because petrol are used by CEOs and you, but the diesel, you see, let me tell you, Vic, diesel is used by tractors, the heavy engines. So if you are a hustler and you want to go to job from maybe Isiolo to town every day, you must use those buses. Those buses actually uses diesel. If you want to move to up country using a bus, you'll definitely use diesel. So to me, I would really wish the president to really look at the subsidy on diesel. Let us remove some taxes on diesel so that we can have that prices stuck at 120 shillings. 2, the government should really also really look at the technology transfer so that we don't be importers for decades. You see, China did technology transfer from European countries, and now they are producers, they are manufacturers. This time, let us also look at how can we transfer technology from China, from other regions, so that we also start our manufacturing companies locally here in Kenya. Then the third thing maybe is a request or a proposal. On energy, on fuel, there are some the Fangano and Migingo, they're really finding it hard at the moment because there's no electricity. Actually, they are running thermal power 24 hours. I know they are doing the fishing business, which also needs to be cooled. It is my sincere request to the government that they can do a undersea. You see, is around 20 kilometers for Migingo and around 6 kilometers for Mfangano, so that we have undersea high power or high voltage cable, so that those 2 islands can have grid. When they have grid, actually, then you'll realize that they will be doing more business at a lesser cost. At the moment, the fuel actually they are selling even more. Mbita, they are selling fuel 10 shillings more. Like now it is 180. Mbita, it is now 190. So the moment it crosses over to Mfangano, then the fuel will be 220. So I think that is my request.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Because we are running out of time, CEO, let me just ask you, the central bank regulated only gave license to 10 mobile banking apps. Do you support that? Because some of them are saying that they were not regulated.
Well, regulation, to start with, regulation is very healthy. And the main aim for CBK coming into that line is because there is a finance bill that was enacted by Parliament. And their hands are tied. It's the MPs and of the last house that passed it, and it was assented to by the president. So ideally, unless if they don't want to be regulated, or rather, if we don't want to be regulated, we need to go back to Parliament and make a few amendments. Yes,
gentlemen, thank you so much. Absolutely, we've just time flew so fast. We're talking to Peter Macharia, who is the CEO of Jenga Credit Limited, Rufus Macharia, lead markets analyst at FX Pesa, and Victor Akuna, who is an engineer specializing on energy. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. Of course, we've been talking about matters economy and how we can just recover post-election. That is all we had time for now. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Victor. Have a good morning.
she doesn't want to get in touch with anyone, and I'll have to ask you not to tell anyone that she's living with me.
Whom did you tell that I don't want to see anyone?
Just tell me what it is, sweetheart. Come on, tell me what you want.
A murderer? Where is that murderer? Where is that evil woman who killed my Alfonso? Where is she?
You don't deserve anything, got it? So that it won't come as a surprise later, Nuria. I want you to know that I'm taking you out of my will and you're not getting a cent from me. Kid, you get that, my dear daughter.
Maybe it was Njunju.
What, Juju? Is there anything like Juju in the first place?
Well, Njui maybe amelongwa.
Wacha Kimwarer na piga kelele. Na piga nduru. Mama katoka mbio.
Oh, a second ago you were begging for my help and now suddenly I'm useless.
Wenda huko. Theophilus, I won't allow you to demean other students. But if you push it, you will be staring at your suspension.
I don't buy threats anymore. I have a bigger problem than a college suspension.
A lowly palace servant calling the shots. Do you think we'll be afraid of you?
We're not afraid of you. You're all barbarians. You're all so uncivilized.
People only know that you're living here with me, and it isn't a good look. Don't you think?
If I want to live here, I can live here. And you're going to be my wife. I don't care what they think.
They told me that our rules are ridiculous. In their eyes, if you're within their borders, love is all that matters. They don't care about the rules.
What? The first trial happened at Skywall. Could it be he is here regarding Mars' whereabouts? I need to be careful.
Wanapiga wimbo yangu. Wanapiga wimbo yangu. Hiyo wimbo ni yangu. Bwana usitupotezee wakati hapa. Nakataa. Mnakani wewe. Sikuarada. Ona siasa hii ndo niko rada. Nakuuliza. Mtu akitupa akili yake atoe kwa jichwa atupe, anapaki na nini? Yule alikuwa ameweka kimongre mchini. Unacheki?
Mimi sielewi.
Si tuletee ufiatu kisi zako hapo. Sikuwa na rambatada mtu wangu. Si hata ulikuwa unacheki ndara. Sikuwa na rambatada.
Mozimbiting.
Simbu simbiti kuzombo toto.
Ozibitingala mo simbitingi besingla samade ni wewe.
Na ndo nakwambiaje ukirieu machuda, makete na makwete.
Utazipata wewe ngoja. Umeuliza nini? Wewe. Sitaki mchezo, unasikia?
Days will come and days will go. The season change.
Ana rabbukum, na mie ni Mola wenu. Fattakuni, muniogope mimi, bimtithali awamiri, ili kwa kutekeleza amri yangu, wajinabi zawajiri, na muepuke yale nimekataa.
Kunazo dua ambazo Muislamu anafaa kutekeleza ama kuzisoma wakati ambapo anatekeleza shughuli katika maisha yake. Kuna dua ambazo unafaa kusoma wakati unapoamka, wakati unapoingia msalani, na wakati ambao unaenda kulala, na pia katika shughuli zozote zingine. Na pia biidhnillah taala wafaa kufahamu kuwa kuna dua ambayo Muislamu anafaa kuomba wakati anapotaka kufanya maamuzi, na dua hii yafahamika kama istikhara.
الوجود محمد في ابتهالات.
Exactly 13 minutes past the top of the hour. We continue apace with the day's conversation. Time for our last conversation this Wednesday morning. Our center on the role of storytelling in shaping climate justice narrative in Africa. My guests are already here to help us converse this issue in the next around 40 minutes or so. To my extreme left, that is Kenneth Kigunda, who is a Climate Story Lab Africa Communications lead. Right next to him is Peter Mudamba, who is a program director, DocuBox East Africa Film Fund. Karibu sana to the program, gentlemen.
Asante sana.
Let me just start with you, Ken. Climate Story Lab Africa reconvening the second time on the 29th of this month. Of course, just means that there was a first time.
Yep.
But talk to me about the purpose of this one-day event.
So Climate Story Lab Africa, it's a convening for storytellers, community frontliners, doers and dreamers, innovators, each and every person who feels like we need to have a conversation around Climate Story Lab, around climate change. And so we are coming for the second time just to try and have a conversation rather on what has been happening. Of course, we felt the effect of climate change in at a global scale, but as well at Kenya and Africa at large. And so it has for us now to start having those conversations, digging deep and interrogating what does this climate change really mean to us, and then what's the power of storytelling, and what role each and every person in Africa takes then to ensure we are mitigating the crisis of climate change. So that's why we are reconvening this time again. Last time we had in 2021, Climate Story Lab Africa happening in Nairobi, and we're so happy again to host it here. We had storytellers coming on board. These are illustrators, cartoonists. We also had community frontliners. We had filmmakers who have done impactful documentaries around climate change, and we also had policymakers in the same room having a conversation. And so that's how it's began. But maybe to take you back on how we start, how Climate Story Lab became.
Sure.
It was because of a farmer called Kisilu back in Mutomo in Kitui, which is northeastern, or rather eastern part of Kenya. And he began documenting extreme weather seasons that he was facing there. And he met this particular researcher who was coming from Norway. And that's when they shot a film called Thank You for the Rain. And that led up to where we are right now. So you see the power of storytelling. It can really generate a lot of conversations to a level that now we can have an entire continent coming and trying to see then how can we steer up our conversation, and how can we be heard about or rather add our voices about climate change.
Well said. I mean, in his opening remarks, Peter Ken has talked about quite a number of issues, the power and aspect of storytelling, dating us back to 2021, you know, when the first meeting was held, so to speak. But you're coming in as partners, DocuBox Film. What exactly is your role, even as you're preparing for this upcoming event, and which key aspect are you playing in this whole idea?
Maybe the way to start this conversation would be to just, first of all, create for you the picture of the partners in the space, because then you understand why each partner comes in. So we have Climate Justice Resilience Fund, which rolled off all the stuff that Ken has talked about, in terms of making sure a film like Thank You for the Rain went down to Mutomo for impact, and we shall be talking about what that is all about. We'll get away from heavy jargon and just talk about Mwananchi language, then people will understand better. Then there is the Doc Society. The Doc Society is our sister company in the UK, and what it does is it uses documentary as a powerful tool for change, and DocuBox is the East African Documentary Film Fund. But apart from funding documentary filmmakers, we also look at ways in which we can be able to use story for change. And you will find different kinds of stories that we have actually been able to work with. There is a film, as an example, called The Letter, which was used, which is still being used at the coast to be able to change the narrative about our elders, because there has been an erosion of the place of the elders in society, and some of them are then branded witches and killed, and it is in the pretext of being branded witches so that they can be able to let go of their land and the like. And if you move away from the spot of the letter, then you go to a film like Thank You for the Rain, or you come to a film like The River of Brown Waters, which is a short film about the Ewasonyiro River. Then it starts moving from stories that could be commonplace into complex spaces, but then because you are watching, because you are looking at moving pictures and are able to decipher what's taking place, it becomes easier. So DocuBox comes in with the power of the story to change the narrative. Doc Society supports. Climate Justice Resilience Fund comes in to help. Then there is Heinrich Böll Foundation, there is Saracen and the like, who have all come together so that this story of climate change can be broken down into a language which is palatable and easy for a guy, as I said, in Moranga, in Shamahoho, or in Rachuonyo, to understand without thinking about the big words that most likely you'll find scientists talking about. So there's a space for everyone, but now we come in with the central bit of what story can do. As storytellers, filmmakers, poets, visual artists, fashion, etc. And we'll talk about that. Yeah.
And we'll come back to that momentarily, even as we look at the impact that it has had so far in shifting the narrative. But coming back to you, Ken, as you said, this is the second time, of course, and as you've already alluded, that obviously there was a first time, that was last year. When you backtrack, looking at the first meeting or the first event that was held 1 year later, so to speak, because there's really quite a lot that is talked about when it comes to matters climate change. We've looked at so very many interventions that have also been preferred, some working, some quite not there. But looking back 1 year later, what has been the impact so far?
Well, if you look back from where we began, and I like the process that we've been through, because it's began with one farmer, then the conversation moved to COP21 in Bonn, and then moved to COP23, and that's how now, again, Kisilu, we came back and said, as opposed to having these conversations, really happen at the grass, or rather at the boardrooms and very big conventions, the UN conventions, the COPs, why can't we then have these negotiations, or rather this conversation? People come together and have that particular storytelling power and speak about climate change in a language that people will understand. So Climate 2021 happened, and we brought people together just to simply interrogate. We always hear this climate justice, but what does it mean to we as African? When we hear about climate financing, then what are these jargonistic words that most people at the grassroots will not understand? And that's why we brought someone like Mary Kuket in Baringo, doing a lot of gender issues and again climate change issues. We brought Magiro Power, John Magiro, who has again done a lot of hydropower, trying to connect people to the grid. We know that around 600 million Africans are not even connected to the power grid. So how do we then be able to mitigate that and get people get energy? So we brought these people in a conversations, trying to steer up to see what young people have done in terms of innovations around climate change and what they've been able to impact their society. Right now in Moranga, the small village that John is, they're able to connect to the power and energy and do a lot of industrial work. When you go to Kisilu, Mutomo, he's able now to do a lot of farming. In fact, they don't have to worry of trekking over kilometers to have their kettles now get water or even pasture, because they're around there. They can grow some small pasture for the cattle. They can also do a little bit of kitchen farming and be able to sustain their families. Look at Makueni County and what we've seen from activists down there, community members pushing for policy. Now it's one of the counties that as a whole, climate climate change policy that actually gives 1%. We still believe there is room for more in terms of allocation, where people can be able now to get even 30% to just deal with the entire issue of climate change, because it's a crisis. So the conversation have moved, and as my colleague Mdas mentioned, Leisa, a lady from the Maasai community, actually Samburu in the northern eastern, was able to shoot a whole documentary about Ewasonyiro. We all know, when you did maybe geography a while back, you knew Ewasonyiro was a big river and served almost the entire northeastern part of Kenya. But now it's a seasonal river. Is it? I don't even know if it exists. At the moment, with the kind of extreme weathers we've had, there is no river Ewasonyiro, and the little that is left has been tapped by just a few, and down the stream, others are suffering. So how do we have conversation then to say, yes, there's this crisis that is happening, but how can we share the resources that are there then to be able to live in a better place? And it can never be told in any other language rather than storytelling. And that's why we see the power of people like, we really encourage more people to come on board. We thank DocuBox is part of this, and encouraging more storytellers. We thank Doc Society is there, just to see how can we have policymakers who are at that level of COP27. Now we have our president, the former president rather, at the UN, and other people chairing climate change at that level. So how do we bring that conversation then back here home to have people feel it and people take action in the little way they can? Look at what's happening. If you are getting into Mombasa County, one of the second biggest county, you remember past Changamwe, there was a whole dump site. I mean, the first phase of Mombasa was a dump site. But now, when you go there, someone like Simba Cement took an action in their own way and built a park. Kids now have a place to go and relax, play. Big people have, elderly people can go sit down, have conversation there. Look at what is happening in Dandora again.
Yes.
There's a community who are taking action, and they said, actually, how can we reclaim this big part of land and make it a playing ground for our kids to be able to engage and play? And that's what kind of small actions we really want people to take. And it can be told through the power of storytelling.
But I also would like to pick it up from where Ken has left on the power of storytelling and bringing the conversation to the communities, and say that Climate Story Lab 2021 was also not just able to bring the conversations down to the grassroots. I think one of the major things was to bring the whole of Africa together to be able to start looking at climate justice and how we can mitigate the effects of climate change. And I'm saying this because during the conversation that happened, I think close to over 1 million people were streaming in and being able to follow the conversation. Now, what happens mostly, you'll find that these conversations will happen at the COPs. They would happen maybe in Paris, in Bonn, etc. And Africa usually is on the periphery, and nothing much is taking place. And as much as COP27 will be in Egypt this year, I think the important thing is conversations happening at different levels in Africa. And if it is led from Nairobi, and people are tuning in from West Africa, from South Africa, etc., like it's going to happen again in Climate Story Lab 2022, then the conversation becomes not a single story conversation, but it becomes a story that is being shared by everybody.
And everyone
then
is included.
At the same time, we move away from always talking about issues where we come in mostly as victims, but we come in with solutions. And I think story becomes a major space where we can bring into the space and say, here are the solutions. He talked about the president, and today I think President Ruto should be, whether it's today or during this week, at the UN General Assembly, and one of the issues that they're going to talk about is climate change. But if the politicians will carry the narrative, I'm not talking about President Ruto, but if politicians carry the narrative the way they do at campaigns, asking questions such as mvua inatoka kwa miti ama inatoka binguni, that is the thing that storytellers must change. Because storytellers are genuine. They are serious about what they want to do, and they'll bring it to you live, and then at the end of the day, you look at how we can mitigate using stories that are there, you see, with one thing about, for example, documentary filmmaking, is that documentary filmmaking is factual storytelling. You are following facts. So you are given facts as they are, and then you deal with them as they are, and you can mitigate because you have the facts with you.
And I really like what both of you are saying, that indeed it's time for us to start thinking about the solution, because let's face it, it is a crisis. It is here with us. And even as you look at, conversations going around, is that it dates back from the 18th century and since the invention of the Industrial Revolution, and we have really blamed it so much as it came with its own positivities, but we've blamed it so much. But it's indeed time for us to start looking at solutions to actually curb and mitigate the issue that is climate change. But even as we are on that, I'd like you, Ken, to talk to me about the theme. What is the Africa climate justice narrative? That particular theme, what message is it putting forth?
Yes, one of the things that people, most Africans are asking, and especially there's a lady in Uganda who is running a whole campaign about loss and damages. And what she's asking is that Africa, yes, we are the victims. And we all know that Africa is not even the largest contributor of the pollution, or rather the damage that has happened to our climate. So how, as the victims who are facing, or rather facing the challenges that come with the impact of climate change, then do we get compensated for that? But apart from that, again, when we're asking about climate justice, we really have to move away from that nomenclature that we keep speaking about Africa being a victim. So what is the other side of the story? And that's what we are really bringing into Climate Story Lab Africa 2022. We just think, apart from being the victim, yes, it's true, we are the victims, but there's the other side of the story that is not usually told, that there are also Africans who are taking actions, who are doing little things to mitigate. And in fact, we feel like Africa is endowed with a lot of resources.
Yes.
If you look at, most minerals come from Africa.
Yes.
If you look at Africa is the most greenest part of the world. Look at the kind of ancestral history that we have around here. I mean, we have dating back in the 18th and whatever centuries that are there, only that our history has never been documented well, and it's about that time we document our stories, we tell them so that other generations that are coming after us, they will learn from that. And we see most Africans, I mean, look, we have the largest young population on earth. What does that tell you? Then the youth can really take actions. The youth can really bring this conversation to the level that they understand. And what language that does most youth understand? We love music. Look at what Sandra, she's doing in Uganda. She sings about climate change. She does a lot of work with fashion, with resources that are there. Just to pass message. And she doesn't even have to go far. When she walks and meets a plastic, that's the same plastic she uses to do her own creation, the artifacts and the designs that she's doing. And she's doing a lot of amazing fashion installations, some of which we'll be showing at the Climate Story Lab Africa. You'll be amazed there's a headphone, a monument that she has made out of the plastic and pollution that, littering that people have been doing in Uganda. And you can imagine Nairobi, you have a whole crisis. And I hope now that we have even the new governance in place, that they will also find such artists as Sandra and other ones here in Kenya who are doing amazing work and tap into those talents. Then how do we solve this climate crisis that is happening here on our own without even going far? How many people know that, for example, if you have onion, instead when you chop it, you usually throw away the roots and that small, the top, the smallest one. If you go and replant it, just for those who have some small spaces, Nairobi also, we have balcons, and you plant it at your balcony, you don't have to buy onions anymore, and you don't have to throw it away. You'll definitely be harvesting from your own small kitchen garden that you have there. So these conversations, we just have to churn them down to a level that common mwananchi understands. People, well, if you look at weather patterns, and now we usually expect July to be the coldest season, but now we're in September.
This has actually extended.
Yes, almost leading to October.
Yes.
we expect by this time we are receiving rains, and farmers have already prepared land and have done planting, but what's happening? We don't even know when we expect them. So it's about time we interrogate it, and the best way we can do, it's going back to...
In fact, the Met Department has already said that we should be expecting very depressed rains.
Yeah, they will not be enough. Look at what's happening in West Africa. There is, floods are happening all over. So it's about that time Africa has this conversation, because also we are starting to have those adverse effects on our side.
Well said. I mean, it's about time Africa starts to have that conversation. It's about time we take action. But equally, talk to us about the long-lasting impact of using this storytelling bit. I mean, I know you've talked about the thank you for the rain, you know, amongst the various hosts of different other documentaries that have been done so far. We are so much used to forums, talks, as you mentioned, conversation in very high-end, big places. But it's time we start exploring some of these new forms of interventions, like the storytelling.
It is indeed, because you see, what happens is that in those spaces where climate discussions happen, and again, they are legit, they are quite fine.
There's nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing wrong with it. But you can imagine for a short while that the discussion is being carried out, and the scientists are there, and the rest of the technocrats are listening in, and it's all about the glacier, about the Arctic, and the melting down of snow, and the like. That is happening. There's a real shift, and there's a real change that's taking place, which is affecting everything that's taking place at the moment. But at the same time, the person whom I talked about on the ground wants just to understand why there has been a prolonged drought in northeastern Kenya, why the animals are all dying and people are in such dire straits. You see people feeding cattle with cartons. That's a sorry state to be in. And then, conversely, in other spaces, like I think part of Western Kenya recently, there was so much rain and Nyanza that there were floodings, and children cannot be able to go to school because the floods have come. And then the longer effect of climate justice or climate change happens in places like Bogoria or Nakuru, where waters are rising, and people are not understanding how come they are now moving away from their homes, and the floods have actually moved them away, and that is a phenomenon that's taking place. It is only story that can be able to capture this for posterity, because most of the times, let me use a bit of where I come from. I came from theater before. I used to be a theater artist. I used to be at the National Theater quite a bit, and I used to use performance for the sake of being able to change narrative and entertain at the same time. But then there comes a point where poetry is strong and it's really, really good, but there is a moment when you ask yourself, this theater piece, how long will it be able to serve? So as an example, Ngahi Kandenda is coming back to the National Theatre. It was there, I think, in May. It's coming back in October. If it doesn't happen again, it's gone and gone forever. Now look at film. Film captures that and puts it on a shelf and can be used for 50, 60 years, and you can always go back without a problem. So I contend that the moving image, being able to capture these stories in a film and the like, becomes one of the strongest ways to be able to use story to counter the narrative. But at the same time, being able to understand that through the medium of poetry or music, because for me, usually music is also poetry, sung, the moment that becomes the medium that is being used, everybody from the young kid who's around 5 or 6 years, they are not scared of the big jargons. They listen to it. When Sandra Subi from Uganda sings and is done in her plastic whatever, people come and ask her questions straight on, and she's able to talk about why she's wearing the plastic clothes which come from fossilized fuel, and why they are bad because they choke the animals as they go into the rivers, and why they are bad because they don't get decomposed and the like. And in a short while, that story is traveling and traveling quite fast, and in a short while it's being tweeted about, people are listening to it and the like. Film remains on the shelf, film can become a very strong educational piece. And we've always questioned why our education system has not seen the power of film and tapped into it. I hope somebody somewhere is listening, because I know for sure that the moment a film is in a space, even if it is shown here at KBC, millions of people are able to consume it, compared
it has
to
a long-lasting
and a wider reach coverage, and it goes beyond our borders to other spaces. So that's where we are at. I believe that story, film, and storytellers are so central to most of the things that happen. In fact, I think for any calamity that has taken place, you'll always find that it is storytellers who elevated it to a point where people now understood the effects and the way to mitigate
and why it actually happened
and
in
why
the
it
first
happened
place.
in the first place.
Now, we talked about our president being in New York for the United Nations General Assembly, and yes, we understand there's going to be a raft of issues discussed in terms of the speeches that are going to be relayed, key among them being the war in Ukraine, as well as the issues of climate change. But also I want you to talk to us about why Africa is potentially the strongest liberator of these issues, yet we are the least contributor. I mean, is that...
It's true. And if we look at Africa and the point that we are, all eyes are on us. And it's about time we really take pride of that and really take actions. Because if you look at the most places, a continent that has not been exploited as much is Africa. If you look at fossil fuel, well, we know some countries produce a lot, but again, Africa does not use it to the larger extent that other countries in the West really use it and utilize it. And we are at a point that we can mitigate that at that point and say, maybe, for example, why don't we use other alternative means of transport rather than those means that use fossil fuel? Since that we are known even for trekking, like I usually have this conversation when people are laughing about Bellevue and the Kamba people and how we like trekking a lot, and take advantage of that and introduce other means of transportation and movement and so forth. So Africa, again, as the largest, I'm seeing that in the next couple of years we'll be at 2 billion. Our population will have increased with 2 billion people, and that's then and it's in between the age of 0 to 24 years, mostly taking the huge percentage of 50% of the population of that of the continent. So you can imagine having such a vibrant young nation, young people in such a continent and what they can do. So why don't we even take up issues of innovation, that people can come with their own social impact innovations that can really help, to solve the whole issue of climate change within this particular. So it's true, Africa is bound with a lot of wealth. Either it's human resource, either it's things to do with the natural resources that we have, and we can overturn the entire climate conversation and climate impact to just make it a reality by using things that will not damage our earth.
All right, I hear you, and Rebecca is just screaming that we are really so much pinched for time. I didn't even realize. But I'd like to just sort of like conclude this conversation and get your headline thoughts in respect to basically what you're conversing and what to expect on the 29th, which is next week, Thursday. Okay.
Before I get to the headlines, I think something else I'll also add to what you said is Africa is a space where we have the opportunity to tap into solar energy, wind energy, geothermal, hydro, the green energy, compared to the spaces like, for example, there's China, where a lot of the manufacturing and all that is happening with a lot of green. That's why I think the cloud in China, they say, is quite darker, and Africa has the opportunity of being able to salvage that by being able to go greener. In the programs that we are being able to give, we'll be talking about climate leadership. There will be the doers and dreamers, and climate leadership is being run by Heinrich Böll Foundation. Then there'll be Doers and Dreamers, which will be led by Saracen. We have the Power of Storytelling projects, which has a lot of fashion and the like, and that's where we are with Doc Society. And there is there is fossil and versus green energy. Ideally, it is breaking down the spaces where we'll have experts talking, but then story comes in and breaks it down in a manner that is able to be understood. And in Climate Story Lab, I want to believe we as Africa can be able to take lead in being able to mitigate the climate change and bring in climate justice in the space. And I want to thank all the partners that are coming into the space, plus all the people who have already registered. We have, I think, over 450 people who have already registered to be part of the conversation. There's a lot of interest in people who want to come and be part of be in the space itself, because it's a hybrid kind of conversation where some people will be in the space, but most of them will be online. Unfortunately, not big numbers can be able to be in the space, so the hybrid place will be more important. So we urge people to register and get into the Climate Story Lab space, Climate Story Lab Africa, and they'll be able to have an opportunity to have their voice, and also to listen to what other, especially young Africans, are doing to mitigate climate change. And it's just a beautiful place because one of the things I think I want to finish up with is there is a game which has been made, which talks about climate change, and it is centered about primary school kids. I wish most of you were able to tune in. Thank you so much.
We are really pressed for time, and we have to just bring it to a close at that point. I mean, there's really a lot we could talk about with respect to climate change. Such a wide topic, but due to the interest of time, we have to end at that point. I have been speaking to Kenneth Kigunda to my extreme left, who's the Climate Story Lab Africa Communications Lead. Right next to him is Peter Mudamba, Program Director, DocuBox East Africa Film Fund. And this is where we just come to a close in this conversation on matters climate change, and obviously also a good place to end Good Morning Kenya this Wednesday morning. Many thanks for watching. I'm Doreen Arange Okello. Till tomorrow, have a good morning.
Between us, I'm done. We are done.
You cannot throw away what we have. Unajua kuhusu dili yako na Leo.
Nani mwingine sasa kwa mimi?
Jackie, bora mahusiano yetu yaishe tu.
Katika hii nyumba kuna kaupepo kanaharibu mapenzi ya watu. Yaani sina ruhusa hata pia kuangalia saa.
Sasa ni kipi wewe kinachokufanya uangalie saa yako kama sio kazi yako? And I think my mom doesn't like kissing.
A lowly palace servant calling the shots? Do you think we'll be afraid of you?
We're not afraid of you. You're all barbarians. You're all so uncivilized.
People only know that you're living here with me, and it isn't a good look. Don't you think?
If I want to live here, I can live here. And you're going to be my wife. I don't care what they think.
They told me that our rules are ridiculous. In their eyes, if you're within their borders, love is all that matters. They don't care about the rules.
What? The first trial happened at Skywall. Could it be he is here regarding Mars' whereabouts? I need to be careful.
Even though you broke my heart, and I lay here in the dark, tears rolling down my face, flowing from my heart.
You should have left them at home. Should have bring love from you down. I said spread the joy around.
You gotta show me there's
right. 'Cause I need your arms around me every night. To me, you're worth a trillion. You're one in a million.
Life cannot always be too serious.
Yeah, man, what's up, yeah?
Allah? We've got to take some time off and laugh, 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 and laugh. And we tickle you down with lots of laughter.
That's why I'm saying I'm who is who. Huh?
With satire like no other.
Tell him to bring it on.
Dakachapa.
Mitikasi leo, makala kutoka BBC yaliyomo. Mfalme Charles III aongoza dunia katika ibada ya mazishi ya kitaifa ya mamake Malkia Elizabeth wa pili, mazishi yaliyohudhuriwa na viongozi mbalimbali kutoka pembe zote za dunia. Baadaye Rais wa Malawi Lazarus Chakwera azungumza na BBC kuhusu kumbukumbu zake kuhusu Malkia. Kisha tunapigia kurunzi mstakabali wa Jumuiya ya Madola chini ya uongozi wa Mfalme Charles III. Moja kwa moja kutoka Nairobi, Kenya, twende kazi. Na mimi ni Linus Mwashigadi, karibu kwa matangazo maalum ya Mitikasi leo kutoka BBC, ambapo leo hii tuko mjini London, Uingereza, tukikuletea dakika 15 za taarifa za hafla ya mazishi ya Malkia Elizabeth wa pili. Mazishi ya marehemu Malkia Elizabeth wa pili yamefanyika mjini London Jumatatu hii na viongozi wa kimataifa wakihudhuria. Takriban watu 2,000 wamehudhuria mazishi hayo, viongozi 500 wa kigeni wakiwemo marais, mawaziri wakuu na wafalme kutoka kote ulimwenguni walimehudhuria misa ya wafu ya marehemu Malkia Elizabeth wa pili. Miongoni mwa viongozi wa Afrika walioalikwa ni Cyril Ramaphosa wa Afrika Kusini, Nana Akufo-Addo wa Ghana, William Ruto wa Kenya na Paul Kagame wa Rwanda. Upande wa kiuchumi, uchumi wa Uingereza umekuwa ukidorora kwa miaka kadhaa. Nchi hiyo ilikuwa katika nafasi ya 3 katika orodha ya nchi zenye uchumi mkubwa duniani Malkia Elizabeth alipochukua usukani, lakini sasa Uingereza iko katika nafasi ya 6. Baada ya ibada, mwili wake umesafirishwa kutoka Westminster Abbey hadi Wellington Ark, kisha utaelekea kwenye kasri ya Windsor kwa ibada iliyotengwa kwa familia. Kisha Malkia atazikwa katika kanisa ndogo linalofahamika kama King George the 6th Memorial Chapel iliyopo Windsor. Na kwa sasa tupe macho taarifa zingine zinazofungamana na kifo cha Malkia Elizabeth wa pili, ambapo uongozi wa Malkia ulileta mabadiliko makubwa ndani ya Afrika wakati wa utawala wa Uingereza ukimalizika na mataifa mbalimbali barani yakijipatia uhuru kama jamhuri. Lakini mataifa mengi yalibaki na uhusiano na Malkia kupitia wanachama wa Jumuiya ya Madola ambao ulikuwa unaongozwa na Malkia, ikiwemo taifa la Malawi. Ansoi amezungumza na Rais wa Malawi Lazarus Chakwera, ambapo alizungumzia vile anavyomkumbuka Malkia Elizabeth wa pili.
When it comes to Malawi, she played a tremendous role in our transition from the British Protectorate.
Kwa upande wa Malawi alikuwa na nafasi kubwa sana katika kipindi cha mpito kutoka kwa utawala wa Uingereza, na tulipata uhuru mwaka wa 1964. Kisha alikuwa malkia wetu kwa miaka 2 kwa sababu tulikuwa bado tunaendelea kuimarisha hadhi ya jamhuri. Alipokuja Malawi nilikuwa na umri wa miaka 24. Watu walifurahi, walicheza, walifurahi sana kumkaribisha kwa sababu ya mabadiliko ya mpito walivyokuwa yanaenda vizuri. Ni mtu mwenye heshima kubwa na tunamkumbuka sana, tutamkumbuka sana. Kwa kweli huu ni mwisho wa enzi.
This is an end of an era.
Na kwa sasa hivi naungana na mwanahabari wa BBC Richard Kagoe ambaye hapo kitambo alikuwa amekita kambi katika makazi rasmi ya balozi wa Uingereza hapa jijini Nairobi nchini Kenya. Richard, karibu sana katika Mitikasi leo. Na tupe taswira ya jinsi hali ilivyokuwa katika makazi rasmi ya ubalozi wa Uingereza wakati walipokuwa wakifuatilia hafla ya mazishi ya Malkia Elizabeth wa pili.
Ile mkutano ilikuwa imefanywa pale katika makazi ya balozi wa Uingereza hapa Nairobi. Wengi sana walimuenzi wakisema kwamba alikuwa mtu akwa mbinafsi na aliweza kufanikisha uhusiano kati ya bara la Afrika na Uingereza, na alisema kwamba alikuwa ni mtu pia alikuwa akitetea haki, na hiyo pengine ni kama vile alikuwa kupitia ile imani yake ya dini ya Ukristo.
Na Richard, najua kwamba umekuwa ukikumbana na watu ambao mbalimbali ambao wakizungumzia kuhusiana na kifo cha Malkia. Labda wakati ulipokuwa ukitangamana nao, hisia zao zilikuwa ni zipi kuhusu kumbukumbu zao za Malkia?
Niliweza kuzungumza na mama aliyekuwa pia alikuwa ni waziri na alikuwa pia na ni mwanasiasa mzoefu, Profesa Julia. Akasema kwamba aliweza kumkumbuka sana na vile alivyoweza kumsaidia alipokuwa kama mwanafunzi katika Uingereza miaka ya 50. Na wengi wale niliweza kuzungumza nao sana waliweza kusema kifo chake kimeweza kuacha mwanya kubwa sana, na wengi sana walikuwa wameshamzoea miaka 70 alipotawala kama malkia. Kwa hivyo wengi sana wamesema wamemuenzi, na kwamba wengi sana wamehuzunika sana kwamba ile pengo itakuwa ni kubwa sana na kuweza kujazwa na yule anayemrithi.
Naam, shukran sana Richard Kagoe. Tusonge mbele. Nchini Ghana, rais wa zamani John Mahama anasema Malkia Elizabeth wa pili atakumbukwa kwa cheo chake muhimu cha kuhakikisha Jumuiya ya Madola inadumu, na kusisitiza kuwa alikuwa na moyo mzuri sana, na Mfalme Charles wa tatu ana kibarua kikubwa cha kuziba pengo hilo.
My first close encounter with her was
Nilikutana na Malkia kwa mara ya kwanza katika mkutano wa Jumuiya ya Madola uliofanyika mjini Perth nchini Australia. Nilikuwa makamu wa rais wangu. Wakati huo aliniomba nimwakilishe. Mkutano ulienda vizuri. Alikuwa mtu mwenye upendo, heshima na taadhima. Alikuwa anajiamini. Hotuba yake ilipokelewa vizuri, na anaamini yeye alikuwa nguzo iliyoshikilia Jumuiya ya Madola pamoja. Yeye ndiye aliyekuwa mwenye dhamana ya Jumuiya ya Madola, na yeye ndiye aliyeleta watu pamoja kwa nyakati nzuri na hata mbaya. Siku zote alikuwa tayari kuendelea kuwa nguzo inayotuleta sisi sote pamoja.
Hii ni Mitikasi leo kutoka BBC, itakayoangazia hivi punde mustakabali wa Jumuiya ya Madola chini ya uongozi wa Mfalme Charles wa tatu. Na ibada ya mazishi ya Malkia Elizabeth wa pili imefanyika Jumatatu wiki hii huko Westminster Abbey, kisha mwili wa Malkia ukasafirishwa hadi katika kasri ya Windsor, ambako familia ya kifalme ilijiunga katika msafara wa kwenda katika kanisa la Mtakatifu George huko Windsor kwa ibada maalum. Sasa kufuatia kifo cha Malkia Elizabeth wa pili, alitambulika na kuwa kiongozi wa Jumuiya ya Madola. Jukumu hilo sio la urithi, lakini mwaka 2018 viongozi wa Jumuiya ya Madola waliamua kwamba kufuatia kifo cha Malkia, Mfalme Charles angekuwa mkuu wa Jumuiya ya Madola. Malkia alilazimika kupitia kipindi ambacho nchi nyingi zilipata uhuru na nchi 56 zikawa wanachama wa Jumuiya ya Madola. Shirika la hiari ya hivi punde ni Togo, koloni la zamani la Ujerumani, na Gabon, koloni la zamani la Ufaransa, ambalo lilijiunga mapema mwaka huu. Sasa wakati wa utawala wake, Malkia Elizabeth wa pili alitembelea nchi 22 barani Afrika kwa zaidi ya miaka 55. Kumekuwa na mijadala mingi juu ya umuhimu wa Jumuiya ya Madola katika ulimwengu. Kwa hiyo mustakabali wa Jumuiya ya Madola utakuwa ni upi chini ya uongozi wa Charles, mfalme wa tatu? Awali mwenzangu Maya Hayakawa amezungumza na Nikita Nkese, mmoja wa washirika wa Jumuiya ya Kifalme iliyo chini rasmi ya Jumuiya ya Madola, yani Royal Commonwealth Society. Alianza kwa kumuuliza mustakabali wa Jumuiya ya Madola utakuwa upi chini ya uongozi wa Mfalme Charles wa III.
Change in leadership always comes with a fresh, or at least at the very least,
mabadiliko ya uongozi daima huja na mtazamo mpya au angalau tofauti kuhusu jinsi mawazo yanavyotekelezwa. Hii bila shaka ni taswira ambayo huenda ikajiri kutokana na ujio wa uongozi wa Mfalme Charles wa III. Walakini ni muhimu kujua kwamba baada ya kulelewa chini ya maadili ya marehemu Malkia Elizabeth wa II, Mfalme Charles bila shaka anawasifu na maadili kama ya mama yake yanafanana. Kwa hiyo utaona mambo fulani yanayofanana katika uongozi na utawala wake. Kwa hivyo kwa Jumuiya ya Madola huenda tukaona labda mabadiliko ya kisera, mabadiliko katika uhusiano, lakini kitu imara kitakuwa ni umoja ambao umeendesha Jumuiya hii ya Madola kwa miongo sasa.
a oneness and unity that has driven it all of these years.
Malkia Elizabeth alikuwa na uhusiano wa kipekee na Afrika Kusini, nchi ambayo ilikuwa ndio ya kwanza aliyoizuru barani Afrika akiwa kama binti wa kifalme na kurejea tena akiwa malkia. Alishuhudia mabadiliko makubwa yaliyotokea kwa zaidi ya nusu karne, lakini katika kipindi cha wiki iliyopita kumekuwa na hisia tofauti kuhusu kifo chake, baadhi ya watu wakimwomboleza kimya.